A homeless girl returned a diamond ring worth more than she'd see in 10 lifetimes, and when the bride's millionaire father asked her one simple question, everything changed. Before we start the story, tell us in the comments what city you are watching from, and at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. She stood there in a borrowed dress that cost more than a car, surrounded by people who'd once stepped over her on the street like she was nothing more than trash. The ballroom fell silent as the millionaire raised his glass, his eyes locked on hers, and spoke the words that would expose every lie, every secret, every twisted thread of fate that had brought them all to this moment. And when the truth finally came out, it wasn't just one life that shattered, it was everyone's. But to understand how a girl with nothing became the center of a storm that would tear through the lives of the city's elite, we have to go back. Back to a cold October morning when the world still thought she was invisible. The ring caught the morning light like a fallen star. That's what Lily thought as she crouched behind the dumpster in the alley off Lexington Avenue, her fingers trembling as they closed around the small velvet box half buried in a puddle of yesterday's rain. She'd been digging through the trash bags outside the boutique hotel, the fancy kind where they threw away perfectly good croissants just because they were a day old when something had glinted between the garbage and the gutter grate. She didn't open the box right away. That's not the kind of thing you do when you're 18 years old and you've been living on the streets of Manhattan for 3 years. You don't open mysterious boxes in alleyways because hope, real hope, is more dangerous than any drug these streets could offer. But her fingers betrayed her, they always did. The lid creaked open, and Lily's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't just a ring. It was the ring. The kind of ring that belonged in movies, in fairy tales, in lives that had nothing to do with hers. A diamond sat in the center, massive, brilliant, catching the weak October sunlight and throwing rainbows across her dirt-stained palm. Smaller diamonds encircled it, like worshippers around a deity, all of it set in what had to be platinum. "Oh God," she whispered, and her voice cracked. She hadn't spoken out loud in 2 days. Lily's mind raced through the possibilities like a trapped animal looking for escape routes. She could sell it. There had to be pawn shops in this city that wouldn't ask questions, that would give her enough money to what? Get an apartment? Buy new clothes? Eat something that didn't come from a dumpster or a soup kit clerk? She could disappear. Take a bus to somewhere warm, somewhere the winters didn't bite through your second-hand coat and make your bones ache. California, maybe. Or Florida. Somewhere people smiled because the sun made them forget how cruel the world could be. Her stomach growled, a sharp reminder that she hadn't eaten since yesterday morning's half-eaten bagel. The ring could solve that. The ring could solve everything. But even as she thought it, even as hunger and desperation whispered their seductive promises, another voice spoke up. Quieter, steadier. The voice that sounded like her mother's, back when she still had a mother, back before the cancer and the bills and the foster homes that weren't homes at all. That belongs to someone. "Shut up," Lily muttered to the voice, to herself, to the universe that had taken everything from her and given nothing back. "Shut up, shut up, shut up." But the voice wouldn't be silenced, because despite 3 years of sleeping in subway stations and dodging cops and learning that most people would rather look through you than at you, despite all of it, Lily Barrett still believed in something. She wasn't even sure what to call it anymore. Decency? Humanity? The idiotic notion that doing the right thing mattered? She snapped the box shut. The hotel loomed above her, all glass and steel and revolving doors that she'd never walked through. The kind of place where doormen wore uniforms nicer than anything she owned, where the lobby probably smelled like expensive flowers instead of garbage and exhaust fumes. "You're insane," she told herself as she stood up, her knees protesting. Her whole body protested these days. Sleeping on concrete had a way of making you feel 70 when you were barely legal to vote. "You're completely insane." But she was already walking toward the service entrance. The velvet box clutched in her hand like a grenade. The back door was propped open probably for the smoking staff, she figured, and Lily slipped inside before she could talk herself out of it. The hallway was clean, aggressively clean. The kind of clean that made her suddenly, painfully aware of how she must look. Her jeans had holes that weren't fashionable. Her jacket had been red once, maybe, but now it was a color that didn't have a name. And her hair… God, when was the last time she'd seen a mirror? When was the last time she'd cared? Voices echoed from somewhere deeper in the hotel. Lily followed them, her sneakers held together with duct tape and prayer squeaking on the polished floor. The hallway opened into a larger corridor, and suddenly she was in a different world. Chandeliers hung from the ceiling like crystallized dreams. The carpet was so thick you could drown in it. And the people were beautiful. Not just attractive beautiful, in that polished, expensive way that came from personal trainers and nutritionists and knowing you'd never have to worry about where your next meal came from. A woman in a cream-colored suit glided past, talking rapidly into her phone about flower arrangements and seating charts. She didn't even glance at Lily. To her, Lily was part of the furniture, less than furniture. But then a man's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding. "Excuse me, you there?" Lily froze. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her legs had turned to stone. She turned slowly and found herself looking at a man who seemed to take up more space than physics should allow. He was tall, at least 6'3", with silver hair swept back from a face that was all hard angles and harder eyes. His suit probably cost more than a car. His watch definitely did. And the way he looked at her, it wasn't disgust. That would have been easier. It was assessment, like she was a problem he was already 3 steps ahead in solving. "How did you get in here?" His voice wasn't angry. Worse, it was curious. Lily's fingers tightened around the ring box. I found something. Outside. I think someone from this hotel lost it." The man's eyebrows rose fractionally. Behind him, other people were stopping, turning, noticing the homeless girl who'd somehow infiltrated their pristine world. Lily could feel their stares like insects crawling across her skin. "What did you find?" the man asked, and took a step closer. "Run," her brain screamed. "Run now." But that stupid voice, her mother's voice, held her in place. Lily held out the velvet box with a hand that shook so badly she almost dropped it. "This." The man took it, opened it, and something shifted in his expression, something Lily couldn't quite read. Surprise, recognition, anger. "Where exactly did you find this?" His eyes snapped back to her, and Lily felt pinned by that gaze like a butterfly on a board. "In the alley, behind the dumpster, by the side entrance." The words tumbled out in a rush. "I didn't take it. I just found it. I wanted to return it. I should go. I'm sorry." "Stay right there." The command was absolute. The man turned, and suddenly he was speaking to someone on his phone, his voice too low for Lily to hear. She stood there, trapped by his earlier order, watching as more people gathered. A woman in a wedding planner's headset, a younger man in an expensive suit who looked like a movie star, a security guard who definitely thought Lily was trouble. And through it all, Lily's mind raced with one thought. What have I done? Because she was starting to realize something. This wasn't just any ring. This was someone's ring, someone important, someone from this world of chandeliers and champagne. And she just walked into their story wearing duct-taped shoes and carrying all her worldly possessions in a backpack that smelled like the streets. The man ended his call and looked at her again, and this time there was something else in his expression, something that made her stomach twist with emotions she couldn't name. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily. Lily Barrett." Why was she answering? Why wasn't she running? Lily Barrett. He repeated it like he was testing how it felt in his mouth. "I'm Richard Remington. This ring." He held up the box. "It belongs to my daughter. She's getting married tomorrow, and this morning she called me in hysterics because she thought she'd lost it. We've had people searching everywhere." The relief that washed over Lily was almost painful. She'd done the right thing. She could leave now. She could go back to her alley and her dumpster and pretend this never happened. But Richard Remington wasn't done. "This ring is worth approximately $250,000. The number hit Lily like a physical blow, $250,000. She'd been holding $250,000 in her hand, and "You could have walked away with this," Richard continued, and his voice had gone very quiet, very intense. "You could have disappeared into this city, sold it, started a new life. But instead, you brought it back." It wasn't a question, but Lily nodded anyway. Her throat had closed up. She couldn't have spoken if she'd tried. Richard Remington studied her for a long moment. In that moment, Lily saw him truly see her for the first time. Not as a problem, not as invisible, but as a person a person who was dirty and desperate and holding on to something she couldn't even explain anymore. Then he asked the question that would change everything. Why? Such a small word, such an enormous weight behind it. And standing there in that hotel corridor, surrounded by wealth she'd never know and people who'd never understand, Lily Barrett did something she hadn't done in 3 years. She told the truth. Because it wasn't mine. Her voice was barely a whisper, but in the sudden silence, it carried. Because someone out there is missing it, and that matters more than what I need. Because... She stopped, swallowed hard. Because my mom used to say that the only thing poverty can't take from you is your character. And I guess I didn't want to lose that, too. The silence stretched out. Lily wanted to disappear. She wanted to melt into the expensive carpet and never exist again. But then Richard Remington did something completely unexpected. He smiled. Not a polite smile, not a dismissive smile. A real one. "Come with me," he said, and there was something in his voice that sounded almost like respect. "There's someone you need to meet." And because Lily Barrett had no idea what else to do, because the universe seemed to be writing a story she didn't understand, and because that voice, her mother's voice, was telling her to trust this moment, she followed him deeper into the hotel. She had no idea that in the next 24 hours, her entire life would explode and reassemble into something she couldn't have imagined in her wildest dreams. She had no idea that this ring, this moment, this choice, was the first domino in a chain reaction that would expose secrets buried for decades. All she knew was that Richard Remington was walking her toward an elevator, and she was too stunned to do anything but follow. The doors closed behind them with a soft chime, and as they began to rise up toward whatever waited above, Lily caught her reflection in the mirrored walls. She looked like a ghost who'd just walked into a world where she didn't belong. But here's the thing about ghosts. Sometimes they're not haunting the living. Sometimes they're being given a second chance to exist. Lily just didn't know it yet. The elevator climbed higher, and with each passing floor, she moved further from the streets that had defined her, and closer to a truth that would shatter everything she thought she knew about herself, about Richard Remington, and about the cruel mathematics of fate. But that's a story for the next chapter. For now, all you need to know is this. When the elevator doors opened on the penthouse floor, and Lily Barrett stepped out into a suite that looked like it had been decorated by someone who thought heaven needed an upgrade, she was still just a homeless girl who'd returned a ring. In 48 hours, she'd be something else entirely, and it would all start with what Richard Remington was about to tell her. The penthouse suite didn't just overlook Manhattan, it consumed it. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around 3 sides of the room, turning the city into living wallpaper. Central Park sprawled to the north like a green scar through the concrete jungle. The East River glittered in the distance, and below, thousands of people moved through their lives like ants, completely unaware that up here, in this palace in the sky, a homeless girl was about to step into a reality that would make her question everything. Lily stood frozen just inside the doorway, afraid to move. Afraid that her dirty shoes would leave marks on the marble floor. Afraid that she'd somehow contaminate this pristine space just by breathing its recycled, lavender-scented air. "Please, sit down." Richard gestured to a cream-colored sofa that probably cost more than most people's cars. I'll get it dirty," Lily whispered. Something flickered across Richard's face. Pain, maybe. Or recognition of something he'd been choosing not to see. "It's a couch, Lily. It can be cleaned. Sit." She perched on the very edge, her backpack still strapped to her shoulders like armor, like a life vest, like the only thing tethering her to reality. Richard moved to a bar cart, because of course there was a bar cart, and poured something amber into a crystal glass. He held it for a moment, staring at the liquid like it held answers, then set it down without drinking. When he turned back to face her, his expression had shifted into something Lily couldn't quite read. Determination mixed with something that looked almost like fear. "I need to ask you some questions," he said, pulling up a chair across from her, not sitting on the couch beside her, she noticed, keeping distance, staying in control. "And I need you to be completely honest with me. Can you do that?" Lily nodded, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. Every instinct told her to run. When powerful people started asking questions, nothing good ever followed. She'd learned that lesson in foster care, learned it in shelters, learned it in every interaction with authority that had taught her she was disposable. "How long have you been on the streets?" 3 years, almost 4. The answer came automatically. She'd stopped being ashamed of it somewhere around month 6, when shame became just another luxury she couldn't afford. And before that? Foster care. After my mom died. Lily's fingers twisted in her lap. Why was he asking this? What did her tragic backstory have to do with anything? Richard leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped together. "Your mother, what was her name?" The question hit Lily like a slap. No one asked about her mother, no one cared about the woman who died and left her daughter to navigate a system designed to chew up kids and spit them out. Sarah Barrett. Why does it matter? What did she look like? Now Lily's stomach was churning. Something was wrong. Something about the way Richard was looking at her with an intensity that bordered on desperate made her want to bolt from this gilded cage and never look back. I don't understand why you're asking me this. Please." And that word, that single word from this powerful man, sounded like a prayer. "Please, Lily, just answer the question." So she did. Because what choice did she have? She was tall, had dark brown hair almost black, green eyes. People always said we looked alike, but I never saw it. She was beautiful. I'm not. Richard's jaw tightened. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos with hands that Lily now noticed were shaking slightly. Finally, he turned the screen toward her. The woman in the photo was laughing, caught mid-moment at what looked like a fancy restaurant. She wore a navy blue dress that hugged her curves, and her hair fell in waves around her shoulders. She was stunning, the kind of stunning that made you stop and stare. "Have you ever seen this woman before?" Richard asked, and his voice had gone hoarse. Lily stared at the photo, really stared. At the shape of the woman's face, at the curve of her smile, at her eyes, green eyes that crinkled at the corners when she laughed. "No," Lily said slowly, "but she looks a little like my mom. Like, if my mom had money and went to fancy parties and didn't die from cancer because she couldn't afford treatment." Richard pulled the phone back, and for a moment he just sat there, staring at the image like it was a ghost. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Her name was Catherine Morrison. She was—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "She was someone I knew, a long time ago." The way he said it, the weight behind those words, made Lily's skin prickle. This wasn't just someone he knew. This was someone who mattered, someone who still mattered, even in past tense. 22 years ago, Richard continued, Catherine and I had a relationship. We were young well. I was 28, she was 24. I was building my first company, working 100-hour weeks, thinking I could conquer the world if I just pushed hard enough. And Catherine, a ghost of a smile touched his lips. Catherine made me remember there was more to life than quarterly earnings and board meetings. Lily sat perfectly still, afraid that any movement would shatter whatever moment this was. We were together for 8 months. 8 perfect, chaotic, impossible months. But I was engaged to someone else. Richard's voice hardened. A strategic marriage, they called it. My family, her family, it had been arranged for years. Business dynasties joining forces. I told myself I could end it, choose Catherine instead. But then my father had a heart attack, and suddenly I was running the entire company, and the wedding was being pushed forward as some kind of stability statement. And Catherine, he stopped, stood up, walked to those enormous windows and stared out at the city that had witnessed all their failures. She left, vanished one day without a word. I looked for her hired investigators, called every friend we had, but it was like she'd never existed. And then I got a letter. One single letter telling me she was gone, that I should forget her and live my life with my new wife, that she'd been a mistake from the beginning. Lily's hands had gone numb. She knew where this story was going. She could feel it building like a storm on the horizon, and she wanted to stop him, wanted to leave before the lightning struck, but her body wouldn't cooperate. I married Victoria 3 months later, Richard said flatly. Had a daughter 10 months after that, Jessica, the bride who lost her ring, built an empire, played the part of the devoted husband and father for 2 decades. But I never stopped thinking about Catherine, never stopped wondering why she left, never stopped loving her. He turned back to face Lily, and the expression on his face made her chest constrict. 2 weeks ago, I hired a new investigator, someone who specializes in cold cases. And do you know what he found? Richard's voice was shaking now. He found a death certificate. Catherine Morrison died 15 years ago from ovarian cancer, died alone in a charity hospital in Cleveland, died broke and forgotten by everyone except the daughter she left behind. No. But Catherine Morrison wasn't her real name, Richard continued, and each word felt like a nail in Lily's coffin. She'd changed it, years before we met, changed it from her birth name because she was running from something, running from someone, and her real name, the name on her daughter's birth certificate, the name she used when she applied for government assistance, was Sarah Barrett. The room tilted. Lily gripped the edge of the couch so hard her knuckles went white. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. "You're lying," she whispered. "You're insane. My mother never mentioned anyone named Richard Remington. She never talked about Manhattan or fancy hotels or any of this. You're wrong. You have to be wrong." But Richard was walking toward her now, and he had that phone out again, scrolling through more photos. Photos of Catherine, who was Sarah. And God help her, the more Lily looked, the more she saw it. The same curve of the jaw, the same slight gap between the front teeth, the same habit of tucking hair behind the left ear. "I have documents," Richard said quietly. "Birth certificates, medical records, a timeline that my investigator pieced together. Your mother moved to Cleveland 3 weeks after she left me. 9 months after that, you were born. She named you Lily Catherine Barrett. Catherine, her middle name, a name her mother had given her and never explained. No. But even as Lily said it, memories were surfacing. Her mother crying on bad nights, staring at photos Lily was never allowed to see. Her mother's refusal to talk about Lily's father, always saying, "He wasn't part of our story." Her mother's last words, whispered through morphine haze. "I'm sorry I couldn't give you the life you deserved. I'm sorry I chose pride over everything." "I think," Richard said and his voice cracked, "I think you might be my daughter." The words hung in the air like smoke, like poison, like truth. Lily shot to her feet, her backpack swinging wildly. "No! This is crazy. You're wrong. You're mixing up people, coincidences. My mom would have told me. She would have..." Would she? Richard's eyes were wet. Actually wet. Would a woman who'd loved someone engaged to another woman tell that man she was pregnant? Would she ruin his life, his marriage, his carefully constructed future? Or would she disappear, change her name, and try to build a life alone because she thought it was the noble thing to do? And that was exactly what her mother would do. Lily knew it in her bones. Sarah Barrett had been proud to the point of destruction, had refused charity, refused help, had worked herself into an early grave trying to provide for her daughter without accepting a single handout from anyone. "I need a DNA test," Richard said. "I need to know for sure. But Lily..." He took a step closer, and she could see the hope and terror warring in his expression. "I've been looking at you for the past 20 minutes, and it's like seeing a ghost. You have her eyes, her mannerisms, the way you tuck your hair. That's exactly what Catherine used to do." "Sarah," Lily corrected automatically. "Her name was Sarah. To you, she was Sarah. To me, she was Catherine. And maybe that's the tragedy. We both knew different versions of the same woman who thought she had to sacrifice everything for everyone else's happiness." Lily's legs gave out. She sank back onto the couch, her mind racing through implications that were too enormous to process. If this was true, and God, what if it was true? Then everything changed. She wasn't alone anymore. She wasn't just a homeless girl with no family and no future. But she was also the secret daughter of a millionaire who'd just discovered her existence. The half-sister to a bride getting married tomorrow. The living, breathing proof that Richard Remington had loved someone before his wife. Someone who disappeared and died in poverty while he built his empire. "Your wife," Lily said suddenly. "Does she know about my mother, about Catherine?" Richard's expression went carefully blank. "Victoria knows I had a relationship before our marriage. She doesn't know about the investigator. She doesn't know I've been looking for Catherine. And she definitely doesn't know about you. What happens if the DNA test confirms it?" The question felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. "What happens to your perfect family? Your daughter's wedding? Your reputation?" "I don't care." And the fierce way he said it made Lily believe him. I spent 20 years living a lie, building a life on top of a foundation made of regret and what-ifs. If you're my daughter, if Catherine gave me a child, and I never knew, then nothing else matters. Not Victoria's feelings, not the company's stock price, not what society thinks. He crouched down so he was at her eye level, and Lily saw tears actually sliding down his cheeks now. A powerful man crying for the life he'd lost, for the woman who died alone, for the daughter he'd never known existed. I have a daughter who's getting married tomorrow in a ceremony that cost $500,000, Richard said. She has everything: education, opportunity, love, security, and you. His voice broke. You've been sleeping in alleys, eating from dumpsters, living a life that should never have been yours. If you're my daughter, I failed you. Your mother failed you by not telling me. The universe failed you, and I can't fix the past, but I can damn well do something about the future. Lily's eyes burned. When was the last time she'd cried? Months? Years? Tears were another luxury she'd learned to live without. But now they came. Hot and fast, and impossible to stop. I don't want to ruin anyone's life, she whispered. I didn't come here for this. I just wanted to return the ring. I know. Richard reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he took her hand, her dirty, calloused, scarred hand, and held it like it was made of glass. And that's how I know Catherine Sarah did something right. Despite everything, she raised a daughter with integrity, with honor, with the kind of character that makes you return a fortune when you have nothing. They sat there for a moment, this millionaire and this homeless girl, both crying for different reasons that were somehow the same. Finally, Richard pulled back and wiped his face. Back to business. Back to being the man who could make decisions while his world crumbled around him. Here's what's going to happen. There's a medical clinic 2 blocks from here that does expedited DNA testing. We'll go there now, get the test done. Results in 24 hours. Tomorrow is Jessica's wedding. We won't let this disrupt her day. But the day after, we'll have answers. And if I'm not? Lily couldn't finish the question. Then I'll help you anyway, Richard said simply. Because you deserve better than what life has given you, regardless of DNA. But Lily? He stood up, straightening his jacket. I don't think that's going to be the result. I've spent too many years reading people, making bets on instinct and probability, and everything about you screams truth. Lily didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know what to say to any of this. Can I ask you something? She said finally. Anything. If I am your daughter, what happens to me? Do I just show up at family dinners, smile for photos, pretend the first 18 years of my life didn't happen? The bitterness in her voice surprised even her. Do I become the charity case you parade around to prove you're a good person? Richard flinched like she'd hit him. Good. She wanted him to hurt. Wanted someone else to feel what she'd felt for years. You become whatever you want to become, he said quietly. My role isn't to control your life. It's to give you the opportunities I should have given you from the beginning. Education, safety, choice. And if you decide you want nothing to do with me or this world, I'll respect that too. But you'll do it with money in your bank account, and a roof over your head, and every door in this city open to you. It should have sounded too good to be true. Should have set off every alarm bell that Lily had learned to trust on the streets. But there was something in Richard's eyes, something raw and honest and desperate, that made her believe him. Okay, she whispered. Okay, let's do the test. Richard nodded and pulled out his phone, already making calls, arranging appointments, moving pieces on a chessboard that Lily couldn't even see. And as she watched him work, watched him transform from vulnerable father to corporate titan in seconds, she realized something terrifying. She wanted this to be true. She wanted to be his daughter, wanted to belong somewhere, wanted to matter to someone who had the power to change her life. And that wanting was the most dangerous thing she'd felt in years, because hope, real hope, could destroy you worse than any despair. The door to the suite opened, and a woman swept in. She was beautiful in that preserved way. Wealthy women managed skin too smooth, hair too perfect, everything calculated to look effortless while requiring hours of daily maintenance. She wore a designer pantsuit and irritation like matching accessories. Richard, the florist, is online too, and Jessica is having a complete meltdown about the seating arrangements. Apparently your mother decided to. She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes landing on Lily. Who is this? And there it was. The moment when Richard had to choose between truth and convenience. Between his old life and the new reality standing in his penthouse wearing duct-taped shoes. Lily held her breath. Victoria, Richard said, his voice steady. This is Lily Barrett. She found Jessica's ring and returned it. I was just about to arrange a reward for her honesty. It wasn't the whole truth, but it wasn't a lie either. And Victoria, because that's who this had to be, his wife, the woman he'd married instead of Catherine, looked at Lily with an expression that shifted from dismissal to calculation. How generous of you, dear, Victoria said, but there was steel under the sugar. Richard, might I have a word? In private?
Of course. Richard turned to Lily. Wait here. I'll just be a moment. They disappeared into another room, a bedroom, probably, and even through the closed door, Lily could hear the muffled sound of Victoria's voice rising in pitch. She couldn't make out words, but she didn't need to. She knew that tone. It was the tone of a woman who'd just found something suspicious in her territory. Lily stood up, moving to those massive windows. The city spread out below her, thousands of lives intersecting and diverging, everyone with their own story. Somewhere down there was the alley where she'd slept last night. The soup kit Clark, where she ate when she could. The library where she spent winter days pretending to read while really just staying warm. That was her world. Not this, but maybe she could have both. Could remember where she came from while moving toward something better. Could honor her mother's memory while accepting her father's help. If he was her father. The door opened and Richard emerged, his expression tight. Victoria followed, her smile now firmly in place, but her eyes hard as diamonds. Lily, was it? Victoria extended a perfectly manicured hand. How wonderful that you found Jessica's ring. We're so very grateful. Richard was just telling me he'd like to offer you a position with one of our charitable foundations. Isn't that lovely? It was a dismissal dressed as generosity, a way to shove Lily into a neat little box labeled Good Deed, and move on with their perfect lives. But Richard was looking at her with an expression that said, play along, just for now. Trust me. So Lily shook Victoria's hand and said, that's very kind of you. Wonderful. Richard, the florist. Victoria's smile never wavered. Line 2, I'll call them back. I'm taking Lily out for an early lunch to discuss the position. We'll be back this afternoon. Victoria's smile flickered. Just for a second. But darling, the rehearsal dinner is at 6. You need to, I'll be back in plenty of time. Richard was already moving, guiding Lily toward the door with a hand on her shoulder. Come on, Lily. There's a cafe downstairs that makes an excellent chicken sandwich. Have you eaten today? She hadn't. Hadn't eaten in 36 hours, actually. But the way he asked casual, caring, like it was the most natural question in the world, made her throat tighten. No, she admitted. Then let's fix that. And just like that, they were out the door, into the hallway, into the elevator, dropping back down toward ground level and the street where Lily had started, her day thinking about nothing more complicated than finding breakfast in a dumpster. Now she was potentially the daughter of a millionaire. No. She was standing in an elevator next to a man who might be her father. Now, everything, absolutely everything was different. The elevator doors opened, and Richard led her not to a cafe, but to a private car waiting at the curb. A driver held the door open, his expression carefully neutral as Lily's dirty backpack left smudges on the leather seat. The clinic, Richard told the driver. Then he turned to Lily. After we do the test, I'm taking you shopping. New clothes, a hotel room for tonight. You're not going back to wherever you've been sleeping. You don't have to. I do. His voice was firm. Whether you're my daughter or not, you returned something precious to my family. You chose integrity over survival. That deserves more than a handshake and a thank you. Lily wanted to argue, wanted to maintain some dignity, some control over a situation that was spiraling away from her faster than she could process. But she was so tired. so tired of fighting and surviving and being invisible. So she just nodded and watched Manhattan scroll past the window. This city that had been her prison and was now, impossibly, becoming something else. The car pulled up to a discreet medical building. They went inside, where everything was white and clean and efficient. A nurse took samples, Lily's and Richard's, with practiced ease. Papers were signed. Payments were made. And through it all, Lily felt like she was watching it happen to someone else. 24 hours, the nurse said cheerfully. We'll email the results directly to both of you. Back in the car. More driving. And then they were at a department store, the kind Lily had walked past 1,000 times, knowing she'd never walk into. I can't afford, she started. You're not paying. Richard was already out of the car, waiting for her. Consider it an advance on that foundation position Victoria mentioned. Call it a signing bonus. Call it whatever makes you comfortable accepting it. So Lily followed him inside, into a world of perfume and soft lighting and salespeople who smiled with their teeth, while their eyes judged everything about you. She saw them noticing her clothes, her smell, her entire existence, saw them starting to move toward them with that particular expression that meant, I'm sorry, but you'll have to leave. But then they saw Richard, recognized him, and suddenly those same salespeople were all smiles and, how may we help you, Mr. Remington? Money didn't just open doors. It made the doors disappear entirely. For the next 2 hours, Lily tried on clothes. Real clothes. Clothes that fit and didn't smell like streets and hadn't been donated by people who wanted to feel good about themselves. Jeans that actually had intact knees. Shirts that weren't 3 sizes too big. A jacket that was warm instead of symbolic. And shoes. God. Real shoes that didn't need duct tape. Richard sat in a chair and occasionally offered opinions. But mostly, he just watched her with an expression that made Lily's chest ache. Like he was seeing not just who she was, but who she should have been. Who she would have been if her mother had made different choices. When they finally left Lily wearing new clothes and carrying bags full of others, Richard took her to an actual restaurant. Not a cafe. A restaurant with tablecloths and menus that didn't list prices, and waiters who pulled out chairs. They ordered food. Real food. Food that came on plates instead of in dumpsters. And as Lily ate, trying not to shovel it in too fast, trying to remember table manners she'd almost forgotten, Richard watched her with eyes that held too many emotions to name. Tell me about your mother, he said finally. Not Catherine, Sarah. The woman you knew, so Lily did. She told him about the woman who'd worked 3 jobs and still couldn't pay the medical bills. About the woman who'd read her stories every night, even when she was too exhausted to keep her eyes open. About the woman who'd died apologizing for not being enough, when really she'd been everything. And Richard listened. Really listened. When Lily finished, tears running down her face into her expensive pasta, he reached across the table and took her hand again. She sounds like she was extraordinary, he said quietly, and I'm sorry I never got to tell her that. I'm sorry she carried that burden alone. But Lily, she would be so proud of who you became despite everything. She would be proud that you returned that ring, that you kept your integrity when the world gave you every excuse to throw it away. Lily nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. They finished eating in comfortable silence. And then Richard drove her to another hotel, not his, but nearby, and booked her a room. An actual room with a bed and clean sheets and a bathroom that was hers alone. Rest tonight, he told her as he handed her the key card. Tomorrow is going to be complicated. There's the wedding. Victoria will be watching everything. But the day after, we'll have answers. And whatever those answers are, Lily, your life is about to change. He left her there, in that hotel room, surrounded by shopping bags and possibilities. Lily locked the door behind him and just stood there for a long moment. Then she walked to the bathroom, her bathroom, and looked in the mirror for the first time in months. The girl staring back at her was almost a stranger. Clean clothes, but the same haunted eyes, the same gaunt face, the same survivor who didn't quite trust that any of this was real. She turned on her shower, and stood under hot water until her skin turned red, washing away months of street grime, washing away the old Lily. But as she dried off and climbed into the massive bed, her bed, she couldn't wash away the questions. What if Richard really was her father? What if tomorrow, at that wedding, she met her half-sister? What if Victoria found out the truth? What if this was all a dream and she'd wake up back in the alley, the ring still in her pocket? This entire day nothing but a hallucination born of hunger and desperation. Lily pulled the covers up to her chin, expensive covers that smelled like lavender instead of mildew, and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere in this city, Richard Remington was probably lying awake too, thinking about the woman he'd lost and the daughter he might have found. Somewhere, Victoria Remington was planning a perfect wedding for her perfect daughter, unaware that her perfect life was about to crack wide open. Somewhere, the DNA samples were being processed, scientific truth assembling itself molecule by molecule. And here, in this hotel room, Lily Barrett closed her eyes and let herself hope. Just a little. Just enough to be dangerous. Tomorrow would bring the wedding. The day after would bring answers. But tonight, for the first time in 3 years, Lily fell asleep in a bed with a full stomach and clean clothes and the impossible possibility that she might not be alone anymore. The last thought that drifted through her mind before sleep claimed her was simple. Please let it be true. Please, please, please let it be true. And in the darkness, with the city humming its eternal song outside her window, Lily Barrett dreamed of a mother who'd loved her enough to leave, and a father who might love her enough to stay. Morning came too fast and too bright. Lily woke up disoriented, her body tensing for the familiar sounds of the street sirens, shouting, the rattle of subway grates. But there was only silence. Expensive silence. The kind of silence that came from triple-paned windows and walls thick enough to muffle the chaos of the city below. For one beautiful, terrible moment, she thought yesterday had been a dream. Then she saw the shopping bags stacked by the door, saw her old clothes folded carefully on the chair, someone, probably her, trying to preserve something of who she'd been. Saw the key card on the nightstand with the Windsor Hotel embossed in gold letters. It was real. All of it was real. Her phone, the ancient flip phone she'd gotten free from a shelter program, showed 8:47 a.m. And underneath the time, a text message from a number she didn't recognize. Good morning, Lily. The wedding is at 4 p.m. at the plaza. I'd like you to come. I know it's asking a lot, but I want you to meet Jessica before we get the results, before everything changes. A dress will be delivered to your room at 10 a.m. You don't have to decide now, but I hope you'll consider it. Richard Lily read the message 3 times, her heart hammering. He wanted her at the wedding. At his daughter's wedding. The daughter who'd grown up with everything while Lily had grown up with nothing. The daughter who had no idea her father had just discovered a potential half-sister sleeping in alleys. Every logical part of Lily's brain screamed that this was a terrible idea, that she should stay away, wait for the DNA results, not insert herself into a family celebration that had nothing to do with her. That showing up would be cruel to everyone involved, but there was another part, smaller, quieter, more desperate, that whispered, "Don't you want to see? Don't you want to know what your life could have been? Don't you deserve to witness the world you were kept from?" Lily got out of bed, took another shower because she could, because the water was hot and free, and belonged to her for as long as she was in this room. She washed her hair twice with the hotel shampoo that smelled like mint and something expensive she couldn't name. When she emerged, wrapped in a bathrobe that was softer than any blanket she'd owned in her life. There was a knock at the door. Her whole body went rigid. Old habits died hard. Knocks meant police, meant security, meant someone who wanted you gone. "Delivery for Ms. Barrett," a voice called through the door. Lily opened it a crack, chain still engaged, and saw a hotel employee holding a garment bag and a shoebox. Behind him stood a woman with a makeup case that looked like it cost more than Lily used to make in a month. "Mr. Remington arranged for these," the hotel employee said with a professional smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He'd clocked her as different, as someone who didn't belong. But Richard's name was a magic word that made him pretend otherwise. "And Ms. Clark here is available if you'd like assistance with hair and makeup." The woman, Ms. Clark, stepped forward with a warmer smile. "Only if you want, honey. No pressure. But Mr. Remington thought you might like some help getting ready." Of course he did, because showing up to a high society wedding looking like you'd just stepped off the streets would defeat the purpose. Lily would need armor, would need to blend in enough that people didn't immediately recognize her as the charity case. "Okay," Lily heard herself say. "Thank you." They came inside, and for the next 2 hours, Lily was transformed. The dress was navy blue, not too flashy, not too plain. Elegant in a way that said, "I belong here, but I'm not trying to upstage the bride." It fit perfectly, which meant Richard had somehow guessed her size, or had someone guess it for him. The thought of him paying that much attention made something in Lily's chest twist. The shoes were simpler, heels not too high and a matching navy. Lily wobbled when she first put them on. She'd been wearing sneakers and boots for so long that heels felt like stilts. "You'll get used to them," Miss Clark said kindly as she worked on Lily's hair, drying it, styling it into something that looked effortless, but Lily knew took actual effort. "Just take small steps. You'll be fine." Makeup came next. Not too much, Ms. Clark seemed to understand, without being told that Lily wasn't comfortable being looked at. Just enough to make her look polished, healthy, like someone who ate 3 meals a day and slept in beds. When it was done, Ms. Clark turned Lily toward the mirror. The girl staring back was a stranger. She looked normal, like someone who'd never slept in a subway station, like someone who had a family and a home and a future that extended beyond the next meal, like someone who could walk into the Plaza Hotel and nobody would think twice. "You clean up nice," Ms. Clark said with a genuine smile. "Mr. Remington is a good man. Whatever he's doing for you, you deserve it." "I can tell." Lily wanted to ask how she could tell, wanted to know what Ms. Clark saw that made her think Lily deserved anything. But the woman was already packing up her things, already moving toward the door. "Good luck today, honey," she said. And then she was gone, leaving Lily alone with her reflection and a choice that felt bigger than it should. Go to the wedding, meet Jessica, step into Richard's world and see what it felt like to belong, even temporarily, or stay here. Wait for the results. Keep herself separate from a family that might not even be hers. Lily's phone buzzed. Another text from Richard. "The car will be outside at 3 p.m. if you decide to come. No pressure, but I hope you do. No pressure," except for the weight of hope in those words. Except for the dress and the shoes and the transformation that had clearly cost money and effort. Except for the fact that Richard Remington, potential father, definite millionaire, wanted her there. Lily picked up the small clutch purse that had come with the dress, checked to make sure her phone and ID were inside, looked at herself one more time in the mirror. "Don't screw this up," she whispered to her reflection. Then she sat down to wait, because it was only 11, and she had 4 hours to convince herself this wasn't the worst decision she'd ever made. The car arrived at exactly 3 p.m., same driver as yesterday, same careful neutrality as he held the door open and pretended not to notice that the girl climbing into his pristine vehicle had been a homeless kid 24 hours ago. Their drive to the plaza took 15 minutes through Saturday afternoon traffic. 15 minutes of Lily trying not to panic, trying not to think about all the ways this could go wrong, trying not to imagine Victoria Remington's face when she saw her again, or Jessica's confusion when her father introduced a random stranger at her wedding. But when they pulled up to the plaza, that iconic building she'd walked past 1,000 times, always from the outside looking in, Lily made herself take a deep breath. She could do this. She'd survived 3 years on the streets. She could survive a few hours at a wedding. The driver opened her door. Lily stepped out onto the sidewalk, wobbling slightly in her heels. Around her, other guests were arriving. Women in designer dresses and men in tuxedos. Everyone dripping with wealth and confidence and the casual assumption that they belonged. Lily moved with the crowd, following them inside. The lobby was even more beautiful than she'd imagined. Gold and crystal and marble that seemed to glow with its own light. A string quartet played something classical in the corner. Waiters moved through the crowd with champagne on silver trays. And there, near the entrance to the ballroom, stood Richard. He saw her immediately. His whole face transformed relief, and something that looked almost like pride flooding his features. He excused himself from the couple he'd been talking to and walked toward her, his hand extending like he was afraid she might bolt. "Lily, you came." His voice was warm, grateful. "You look beautiful." She didn't feel beautiful. She felt like an imposter in borrowed clothes, about to be exposed at any second. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered. "This is your daughter's wedding. This is exactly where you should be." Richard's hand found her elbow, steadying her. "Jessica knows I invited someone who helped us find her ring. She's grateful, and I want her to meet you." Before Lily could protest, Richard was guiding her through the crowd. People nodded at him, smiled, tried to catch his attention. But he moved with purpose, cutting through the social obligations like they were nothing more than obstacles. They entered the ballroom, and Lily's breath caught. It was a fairy tale. White flowers everywhere, cascading from the ceiling, climbing the walls, covering every available surface. Candles flickered on tables set with china and crystal, and at the far end of the room, an altar draped in silk and roses, waiting for the ceremony to begin. "Wait here," Richard said, depositing Lily near a group of guests who were admiring the decorations. "I'll bring Jessica over." Then he was gone, and Lily was alone in a sea of strangers. She tried to make herself invisible. Old habit. Stand near the walls, don't make eye contact, blend into the background. But in this dress, in this place, she kept catching people's eyes. They'd glance at her, curious, wondering who she was, why they didn't recognize her. Lily grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter just to have something to do with her hands. She didn't drink it. Alcohol on an empty stomach would be a disaster, but holding it made her feel slightly less out of place. "There you are." Lily turned and found herself face to face with a woman who could only be Jessica Remington. She was stunning. Blonde hair swept up in an elaborate updo. Makeup that looked professionally done but somehow still natural. And her dress? God, her dress was something out of a magazine. White lace and silk that probably cost more than a car. More than some houses. But it was her smile that struck Lily. Genuine. Warm. With none of the calculated politeness that Lily had seen on so many wealthy faces. "You must be Lily," Jessica said. And before Lily could respond, she was being pulled into a hug. A real hug. The kind that made Lily's entire body go rigid, because she'd forgotten what it felt like to be touched without suspicion or pity. "Dad told me what you did. Returning my ring when you could have just... God, I can't even imagine. Thank you. Seriously. You saved my entire wedding." She pulled back, still holding Lily's hands, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I was so stupid." Jessica continued. I was adjusting it in the car. It was slightly too big. I'd been meaning to get it resized, and it must have slipped off without me noticing. I thought I'd lost it forever. And then Dad called and said you'd found it, and I'm so grateful. Is there anything I can do for you? Anything at all? The earnestness in her voice was almost painful. This woman, this privileged, beautiful, perfect woman, genuinely wanted to help. Had no idea that the girl standing in front of her might be her half-sister. Might be the result of their father's affair with a woman he'd loved before their mother. You don't need to do anything, Lily managed. I'm glad it worked out. Well, I'm glad you're here. Jessica squeezed her hands once more before releasing them. Stay for the reception, okay? We're going to have the best party. And I want to introduce you to my husband, well, almost husband. He's around here somewhere, probably freaking out about his vows. She laughed, and the sound was so carefree that Lily felt something ugly twist in her chest. Jealousy. Pure, toxic jealousy. Because Jessica got to be carefree, got to worry about wedding vows and dress fittings, and whether the flowers matched her vision, while Lily had spent the last 3 years worrying about survival. It wasn't Jessica's fault. Lily knew that, but knowing it didn't make the feeling go away. I should let you go, Lily said, taking a step back. You probably have a million things to do before the ceremony. 1,000,001, Jessica agreed with a rueful smile. But I'm glad we got to meet, and seriously thank you again. For everything. Then she was gone, swept away by a bridesmaid who was frantically gesturing about something, and Lily was alone again. Richard reappeared at her elbow. That went well. She seems nice, Lily said carefully. She is nice. She's everything Victoria and I hoped she'd be. Richard paused. But she's had advantages you never had. And if it turns out you're my daughter, that's going to be a difficult conversation. For all of us. Lily looked at him sharply. Does she know? About the DNA test? No, nobody knows except you and me. I couldn't. He ran a hand through his silver hair. I couldn't do that to her. Not on her wedding day. She deserves to be happy today. Tomorrow we can deal with reality. Tomorrow. When the results would come back. When everyone would know the truth. Mr. Remington! A sharp voice cut through the ambient noise. Victoria appeared, resplendent in a champagne-colored dress that probably cost as much as a semester of college. Her eyes landed on Lily, and something cold flickered in their depths. I thought we discussed appropriate guest management. The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. I'm introducing Lily to Jessica, Richard said evenly. As we discussed yesterday. Yes, well, that's been accomplished. Perhaps Ms. Barrett would be more comfortable at the reception. The ceremony itself is rather intimate. Family only in the front sections. It was a dismissal. Polite. Vicious. A reminder that Lily didn't belong here. Wasn't family. Wasn't anything more than a temporary curiosity. But Richard's jaw tightened. Lily is my guest. She'll sit wherever I've arranged for her to sit. The temperature between them dropped 20 degrees. Victoria's smile never wavered, but her eyes went hard as diamonds. Of course, darling. Whatever you think is best. She turned to Lily. I hope you enjoy the ceremony, dear. Then she was gone, gliding away to attend to some other crisis, leaving tension thick enough to choke on. I can leave, Lily said quietly. I don't need to stay for the ceremony. I can come back for the reception, or you're staying. Richard's voice was firm. Victoria doesn't get to decide who's welcome and who isn't. Not in this. But Lily could see the cost of that defiance in the tight lines around his mouth. In the way he watched Victoria's retreating form, like she was a problem he couldn't solve. This family was already fracturing, and the DNA results weren't even back yet. What would happen when they were? When the truth came out? Would it shatter completely? Would Jessica hate her father for his lies? Would Victoria leave him? Would Lily end up destroying the lives of people who'd done nothing wrong except exist in the space she should have occupied? The doubts circled like vultures. But then Richard was guiding her to a seat not in the front row, but close enough to matter, close enough to send a message. And as guests filed in and the string quartet shifted to something that signaled the ceremony was about to begin, Lily made herself breathe. She could do this. She could sit through a wedding. She could watch Jessica marry someone who loved her. She could be happy for people she didn't know, for a life she'd never have. The music swelled. Everyone stood. And there, at the back of the ballroom, was Jessica on Richard's arm. Father and daughter, walking toward the altar together. Richard's face was a mask of pride and love, and something that looked like heartbreak. Because he was thinking about Catherine, Lily realized, about Sarah, about the woman who should have been walking beside him, watching their daughter get married, about the daughter he hadn't known existed until yesterday, sitting in the audience like a ghost haunting his present. They reached the altar. Richard kissed Jessica's cheek, whispered something in her ear that made her smile through tears, and then stepped back to take his seat next to Victoria. The ceremony began. Lily barely heard the words. She was too busy watching Jessica and her groom exchange vows with voices that shook with emotion, watching the guests dab at their eyes with expensive handkerchiefs, watching Richard stare at his daughter like he was memorizing every second, storing it away against the chaos that was coming, and watching Victoria, whose perfect composure never cracked, but whose hand gripped her husband's arm tight enough to leave marks. She knew, maybe not the specifics, but she knew something was wrong, knew her husband was keeping secrets, and when those secrets came out, there would be hell to pay. The ceremony ended with a kiss that made the whole room erupt in applause. Jessica and her new husband walked back down the aisle, faces glowing with joy. Richard and Victoria followed, and then the rest of the guests filed out toward the reception. Lily moved with the crowd, feeling like she was floating. Nothing felt real. Not the flowers, not the music, not the fact that she was at a Plaza Hotel wedding, wearing a dress that fit and shoes that didn't need duct tape. The reception was in an adjoining ballroom, somehow even more elaborate than the ceremony space. Tables draped in silk, a dance floor that gleamed like water, a band setting up on a stage, and everywhere, food. Real food, past hors d'oeuvres on silver trays, stations with carved meats and exotic salads and desserts that looked like art. Lily's stomach growled, reminding her that she'd been too nervous to eat lunch. She made herself take small portions, made herself eat slowly, made herself act like this was normal, like she attended plaza weddings all the time and wasn't silently freaking out about the sheer excess of it all. Lily! She turned to find Jessica approaching, her new husband in tow. He was handsome in that generic way wealthy men often were: good teeth, good hair, good breeding. But his smile seemed genuine as Jessica introduced them. "This is Michael. Michael, this is Lily, the amazing woman who found my ring." Michael shook her hand. "Jessica told me what you did. That's pretty incredible. Thank you for making sure her special day stayed special." "It wasn't a big deal," Lily said, even though it was. Even though returning that ring was the biggest deal of her entire life, the choice that had led to this moment. They chatted for a few more minutes, meaningless small talk about the wedding, the food, the weather, and then Jessica and Michael were pulled away by more guests, wanting to offer congratulations. Lily drifted to the edges of the room again, found a quiet corner where she could observe without being observed. Watched as Richard gave a toast that made Jessica cry and everyone applaud. Watched as Victoria smiled for photos while her eyes stayed cold. Watched as the band struck up and the newlyweds took their first dance. It was beautiful. All of it was beautiful, and Lily had never felt more alone in her life. Because she could see it now, the full picture. If the DNA test came back positive, she'd be forever connected to these people. But she'd never really belong. would always be the homeless girl who crashed into their perfect world, the reminder of Richard's past mistakes, the living proof that their family had cracks in its foundation. She was so lost in her thoughts that she didn't notice Richard approaching until he was right beside her. "Dance with me," he said quietly. Lily blinked. "What?" "Dance with me, just once. Let me pretend, for 3 minutes, that I didn't miss 18 years of your life." And before Lily could protest, before she could remind him that she didn't know how to dance, that everyone would stare, that it was inappropriate on every level, he was leading her onto the dance floor. The song was slow. Richard's hand found her waist, held her the appropriate distance away. Not too close, not too far. And then they were moving, and Lily was following his lead because she had no choice. "I'm sorry," Richard said, his voice low enough that only she could hear, "for putting you through this, for asking you to come. But I needed to see you here, needed to see you as part of this world instead of outside it." "I don't belong here," Lily whispered back. "You belong wherever you decide you belong." Richard's eyes were intense. "DNA doesn't determine worth, Lily. Character does. And you have more character than most of the people in this room." Lily wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that she could somehow bridge the gap between the streets and this ballroom. But the distance felt infinite. The song ended. Richard stepped back, gave her a small smile. "Thank you for today, for all of it. Tomorrow morning, we'll have answers. And whatever those answers are, I want you to know something." He paused, and Lily saw tears gathering in his eyes. "I'm glad you found that ring. I'm glad fate or chance, or whatever you want to call it, brought you back into my life. Because whether you're my daughter or not, you've reminded me of something I'd forgotten." "What's that?" Lily asked, her own voice shaking. "That some things are more valuable than money, that integrity matters, that the choices we make when nobody's watching define who we really are." He reached out and squeezed her hand. "Your mother raised you right, and I hope I get the chance to be part of your life going forward." Then he walked away, back to Victoria and Jessica and his perfect, fracturing family. And Lily stood there on the dance floor, surrounded by wealthy strangers who were already forgetting she existed, and made a decision. Tomorrow, when the results came back, she would tell Richard the truth. Not just about the DNA, but about everything. About how she'd thought about keeping the ring. About how she'd spent the last 24 hours equal parts, hoping and dreading that he was her father. About how being here tonight had shown her exactly how wide the gap was between their worlds. She would be honest, completely honest, and then she would let him decide what came next. But tonight, for just a few more hours, she would stay, would watch this family celebrate, would memorize what it felt like to be included, even temporarily, even fraudulently, because tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, the truth would come out. Tomorrow, Lily Barrett would discover whether she'd gained a father or lost the last shred of hope she'd been clinging to. But tonight she ate good food and drank champagne and pretended just for a little while that she was the kind of person who belonged at Plaza Hotel weddings. And when she finally left, when the car drove her back to her hotel room and she kicked off those uncomfortable heels and peeled off that beautiful dress, she caught sight of herself in the mirror one more time. The transformation was wearing off. She could see the old Lily underneath the hard edges, the wariness, the survivor who knew better than to trust fairy tales. But there was something new there, too. A spark, a possibility. A girl who'd returned a ring and found something she hadn't been looking for. Hope. Dangerous, beautiful, terrifying hope. Lily climbed into bed and set her alarm for early morning. The results would come sometime tomorrow. Richard had promised to call the moment he knew. And then... well, then they'd see. She fell asleep thinking about DNA tests and wedding dances, and the way Richard had looked at her like she mattered. Like she was more than just a homeless girl who'd made one good choice. Tomorrow would bring truth. Tonight brought dreams of a life that might actually be hers. The email arrived at 6:47 a.m. Lily knew because she'd been awake since 5, staring at her phone like it was a bomb counting down to detonation. She'd barely slept every time she'd drifted off. Nightmares jerked her awake. Dreams where she opened the results, and they said, "Not a match," in big red letters. Dreams where Richard looked at her with disappointment and said, "I'm sorry. You're not my daughter after all." Dreams where she was back on the street. And this entire weekend had been nothing but a cruel hallucination. When her phone buzzed with the notification, her whole body went cold. DNA test results, confidential. Her fingers trembled so badly she almost dropped the phone. She tried to open the email 3 times before she managed it, her heart hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. And there it was, pages of technical jargon, genetic markers and probability percentages and scientific language that might as well have been a foreign tongue. But at the bottom, in plain English, one sentence that changed everything. Conclusion. Probability of paternity is 99.98%. Richard Remington is the biological father of Lily Catherine Barrett. Lily read it again, and again, and again, 99.98%. Not a maybe, not a possibility, a certainty. Richard Remington was her father. The phone slipped from her fingers onto the bed. Lily sat there, frozen, as the reality crashed over her in waves. She had a father, an actual father. Not some distant memory or mystery or hole in her life story, but a real person with a name and a face and money and power, and her phone rang. Richard's name flashed on the screen. Lily stared at it for 3 rings, before her hand moved on autopilot and answered. "Lily." His voice was thick with emotion. Did you get the email?" "Yes." The word came out as barely a whisper. "I'm coming to get you. Right now. Don't go anywhere. We need to talk. We need to—" He stopped, and Lily heard him take a shuddering breath. "My God, you're my daughter." "You're actually my daughter." The line went dead. Lily sat there holding the phone, trying to process what had just happened, trying to understand that her entire life had just split into before and after. Before she knew, after she knew. She was Richard Remington's daughter. She was Jessica's half-sister. She was part of a family that didn't know she existed until 48 hours ago. Her hands were shaking, so badly that getting dressed took twice as long as it should have. She pulled on jeans and a sweater from her shopping bags, her new clothes. Because she had new clothes now. Because her father had bought them for her. Because she had a father who bought her things. Thoughts spiraled faster and faster, until Lily had to grip the edge of the bathroom, sink and force herself to breathe. In, out, in, out. She'd survived 3 years on the streets. She could survive this. 20 minutes later, there was a knock on her door. Lily opened it to find Richard standing there, still in the clothes from last night's wedding. His hair was disheveled. His tie was loose. His eyes were red-rimmed like he'd been crying. "Can I come in?" he asked, and his voice cracked on the last word. Lily stepped aside. Richard walked into the room and just stood there for a moment, staring at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Really seeing her, not as a possibility or a maybe or a girl who'd returned a ring, but as his daughter. "I have a daughter," he said finally, and tears were streaming down his face now. "I have another daughter. Catherine gave me a daughter, and I never knew. All these years, you were out there, and I never knew." Lily's own eyes burned. "She never told you. She never—" "I know." Richard's voice was fierce. "I know she thought she was doing the right thing. Protecting me or my career or my marriage or whatever rationalization she used. But God, Lily, You were in foster care. You were on the streets. And I was here, in penthouses and boardrooms, completely oblivious that my child was suffering. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into a hug. A real hug, the kind fathers gave daughters, tight and desperate and full of 18 years of missed moments. Lily stood rigid for a second. Then something broke inside her, and she was hugging him back, crying into his expensive shirt, letting herself feel all the grief and anger and relief that had been building since she'd read those results. "I'm sorry," Richard whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry your mother felt like she couldn't tell me. I'm sorry for every single day you spent alone. But I'm here now, and I swear to God, Lily, I will spend the rest of my life making this right." They stood there for a long time, his father and daughter, who'd been strangers 3 days ago, both crying for different reasons that were somehow the same. Finally, Richard pulled back, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "We need to talk about what happens next. About telling Victoria. About telling Jessica. About Jessica." Lily's stomach dropped. "Oh God, Jessica just got married yesterday. And now we have to tell her that her father had another daughter he didn't know about?" She deserves to know the truth. Richard's jaw was set. "They all do. I've spent 20 years living a lie, building a life on top of secrets and half-truths. That ends now. But what if she hates you? What if Victoria leaves you? What if? Then that's what happens." Richard's voice was steady. "I'm not going to hide you, Lily. I'm not going to pretend you don't exist, or that this is somehow shameful. You are my daughter, and if my family can't accept that, then they're not the family I thought they were." The certainty in his voice should have been comforting, should have made Lily feel secure, but all she could think about was the way Victoria had looked at her at the wedding, the cold calculation in her eyes, the way she'd dismissed Lily like an inconvenient problem to be managed. "When are you going to tell them?" Lily asked quietly. "Today. This morning. Jessica and Michael are staying at the hotel before they leave for their honeymoon tomorrow. Victoria is meeting me for brunch at 11. I'll tell them then. Do you want me there?" Richard hesitated. "I think it might be better if I tell them first. Let them process. And then, if they're willing, I'll introduce you properly. Not as the girl who found a ring, but as my daughter." Lily nodded, even as anxiety twisted her stomach into knots. "What if they don't want to meet me? Then I'll give them time." "But Lily!" Richard took her hands. "I need you to understand something. Whatever happens with Victoria and Jessica, it doesn't change the fact that you're my daughter. It doesn't change my commitment to you. You're not going to be cast aside or forgotten again. Do you hear me?" "I hear you." But hearing it and believing it were 2 different things. Richard checked his watch. "I need to go. Need to shower and change before the brunch. But I want you to stay here. Order room service. Charge whatever you want to the room, and I'll call you after I've talked to them." He moved toward the door, then paused and turned back. "Lily, thank you for returning that ring. If you hadn't, I might never have found you. Never have known Catherine gave me a gift I didn't deserve." Then he was gone, and Lily was alone again with the knowledge that somewhere in this city, Richard Remington was about to blow up his family's entire world. The hours crawled by like wounded animals. Lily tried to distract herself, turned on the TV and couldn't focus on anything, ordered breakfast from room service and barely touched it, paced the room until she'd memorized every detail of the wallpaper. Her phone stayed silent. 10 o'clock came and went. 11 o'clock. Noon. Still nothing. At 12:47 p.m., her phone finally rang. "Lily." Richard's voice was strained. "Can you come to my penthouse? The one at the hotel where we first met. Victoria and Jessica are here. They want to meet you." Lily's heart stopped. "They want to meet me? Are they okay? Just come. Please, we'll explain everything when you get here." The line went dead. Lily changed into one of her nicer outfits, a simple dress and cardigan that looked put together without trying too hard. Fixed her hair, checked her reflection, and saw a girl who looked like she belonged in nice hotels and expensive restaurants. But inside, she was still the homeless kid who'd found a ring and made a choice that changed everything. The drive to Richard's hotel took 15 minutes. 15 minutes of Lily's mind racing through every possible scenario. Maybe they were angry. Maybe they wanted to yell at her for disrupting their lives. Maybe they wanted to pay her off to disappear. Or maybe, and this was the hope she barely let herself acknowledge, maybe they wanted to welcome her, accept her, make room for her in their family. The elevator ride to the penthouse felt like ascending to judgment. Lily's hands were shaking. Her mouth was dry. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to go back to the streets where at least she knew the rules. But then the elevator doors opened, and there was Richard waiting for her. "They're in the living room," he said quietly. "Victoria is processing. Jessica is shocked, but wants to talk to you. Just be honest, okay? Tell them your story. Help them understand." Lily nodded, not trusting her voice. They walked into the living room together, and Lily found herself facing Victoria and Jessica Remington. Victoria sat on the couch, her posture perfect, her face a mask of composure that didn't quite hide the fury in her eyes. She wore a pale pink suit that probably cost thousands, and her hands were folded in her lap like she was at a business meeting. Jessica stood by the windows, still in casual clothes from her post-wedding mourning. Her eyes were red from crying. But when she saw Lily, something shifted in her expression. Not anger, curiosity maybe, or recognition. "Lily," Richard said, his hand on her shoulder, "these are well, you know who they are. Victoria, Jessica, this is Lily Barrett, my daughter." The words hung in the air like a grenade. Victoria's jaw tightened. "So it's true. The DNA test confirmed it." "Yes." Richard's voice was steady. "Lily is my daughter with Catherine Morrison, who apparently changed her name to Sarah Barrett after we separated. She died 15 years ago, and Lily has been on her own ever since." "On her own." Victoria's voice was ice. "Your investigator mentioned she's been homeless, living on the streets of Manhattan, for 3 years. The way she said it with such disdain, such barely concealed disgust, made Lily's face burn with shame. "That's not her fault." Richard's voice sharpened. "That's the system's fault, society's fault, and my fault for not knowing she existed. How convenient." Victoria stood, her movements controlled and precise. "This girl shows up out of nowhere, claims to have found Jessica's ring, and suddenly you discover she's your long-lost daughter? Forgive me if I'm skeptical." "The DNA test doesn't lie," Richard said. "DNA tests can be falsified. Results can be bought." Victoria turned to Lily, her eyes cold as winter. "What do you want? Money? A place in the will? A story to sell to the tabloids?" "Victoria," Richard started. But Lily cut him off. "I didn't ask for any of this." Her voice came out stronger than she expected. "I found a ring in an alley. I returned it because it wasn't mine. That's all. I didn't know who Richard was. I didn't know about Catherine or Sarah or any of it until he told me. And if I could go back and not find that ring, not walk into this building, not become part of this mess, I would. Because trust me, Mrs. Remington, I don't want your life. I don't want your money. I just wanted to do the right thing." Silence fell like a guillotine blade. Then Jessica spoke for the first time. "You really didn't know? About Dad?" Lily turned to her. "I knew my mom had loved someone before I was born. Someone she wouldn't talk about. But she never gave me a name. Never told me he was wealthy or married or any of it. She just said he wasn't part of our story. That it was better if we moved on." "And you've really been living on the streets?" Jessica's voice was softer now. Less accusing, more sad. "For 3 years. Before that, foster care." Lily met her eyes. I know how this looks. I know you have no reason to trust me. But I'm not here to take anything from you. I didn't even want to come to your wedding. But Richard insisted. And you were at my wedding? Jessica's eyes widened. That guest Dad introduced? The one who found my ring. That was you? And you knew then? Knew you might be my sister? We didn't know, Richard interjected. We'd just done the DNA test. The results came this morning. Jessica moved closer to Lily, studying her face with an intensity that made Lily want to disappear. You have his eyes. Dad's eyes. I never noticed before, but now I see it. And your cheekbones, those are from Mom, from Catherine, from... She stopped, swallowed hard. From the woman Dad loved before my mother. I loved Victoria, too, Richard said quietly. In my own way, did you? Victoria's voice cracked for the first time. Or did you spend 23 years of marriage wishing I was someone else? Wishing you'd made different choices? Looking at me and seeing the wrong woman? That's not fair, Victoria. Fair? Victoria laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about fair, Richard? I gave you the best years of my life, raised your daughter, stood by you through every business crisis and scandal, built this family from nothing. And now I find out that the whole time you were pining for some woman who left you? That you have another daughter you never bothered to tell me about? I didn't know about her. Richard's voice rose. Catherine never told me she was pregnant. She vanished, changed her name, died alone rather than reach out for help. And yes, I've thought about her over the years. Yes, I've wondered what might have been. But that doesn't mean I didn't care about you, about our family. But you didn't love me. Victoria's voice was flat. Not the way you loved her. I always knew it, but I told myself it didn't matter. That love wasn't necessary for a successful marriage. That respect and partnership were enough. But now, looking at you, seeing how you look at this girl, your real daughter, I realize I was just a stand-in, a replacement. Second best. Victoria, please, I want a divorce. The words dropped like bombs. Richard went pale. You don't mean that. I absolutely mean it. Victoria's composure was back, her voice steady. I won't be second choice anymore. I won't spend the rest of my life watching you play happy family with the daughter you actually wanted. Jessica is an adult now. My obligation is fulfilled. And I'm done. She picked up her purse, because of course she'd brought her purse, because Victoria Remington never went anywhere unprepared, and walked toward the door. Mom, Jessica started, but Victoria cut her off. I'm sorry, darling. I'm sorry your honeymoon has to start this way. But I won't stay in this marriage anymore. Your father made his choice 18 years ago when he let Catherine go. And he's making his choice now. It's just not me. The door closed behind her with a soft click that somehow felt louder than a slam. The three of them stood there in the wreckage. Richard, Jessica, and Lily, none of them quite believing what had just happened. I'll go, Lily said finally. This is my fault. If I'd just kept the ring, if I'd never come here, don't. Jessica's voice was sharp. Don't you dare blame yourself. This has been coming for years. My parents' marriage has been a beautiful lie for as long as I can remember. They were good at pretending, but it was always hollow. I just didn't want to see it. She sank onto the couch, her face in her hands. God, I got married yesterday. Literal yesterday. And today, my mother asks for a divorce, and I find out I have a secret half-sister who's been homeless. This is insane. This is completely insane. Richard moved to sit beside her, his hand on her back. I'm sorry, Jess. I'm so sorry. This should have been handled differently. Better. But I couldn't keep lying. Not when Lily was right here. Not when the truth was finally available. Jessica looked up, her eyes meeting Lily's. Tell me about Mom. About Catherine Sarah. What was she like? Lily hesitated. I don't know if that's please. Dad has his version. I want to know yours. I want to know about the woman who was apparently my father's great love. So Lily sat down in one of the chairs and told her. about the mother who'd worked herself to death trying to provide, about the woman who'd read stories every night and made holidays special despite having no money, about Sarah Barrett's pride and strength and determination to give her daughter a better life than she'd had. And as she talked, she saw Jessica's face cycle through emotions. Grief for the woman she'd never known, anger at the unfairness of it all, and slowly, grudgingly, something that might have been understanding. When Lily finished, Jessica was quiet for a long moment. "She sounds like she was brave," Jessica said finally. "Stupid for not telling Dad, but brave for raising you alone, for protecting everyone else at the cost of her own happiness." "She was the bravest person I've ever known," Lily agreed. Jessica turned to Richard. "What are you going to do? About Mom? About Lily?" "I'm going to try to fix things with your mother," Richard said. "See if she'll talk to me once she's calmed down. But Jessica, I need you to understand something. Lily is my daughter. She's your sister. And I'm not going to hide her or pretend she doesn't exist. Whatever happens with Victoria, Lily is part of this family now." "Just like that?" Jessica's voice was incredulous. "She just gets to be part of the family? Gets access to everything we've built?" "She deserves it," Richard said firmly. "She's my daughter. She's been denied everything she should have had. And yes, just like that, she's family." Jessica looked between them, her expression unreadable. Then she stood up, walked over to Lily, and held out her hand. "Okay. If Dad says you're my sister, then you're my sister. I'm not going to punish you for choices other people made before you were born. But I need time. I need space to process this. And I need you to understand that this is weird for me too. I've been an only child for 27 years. Suddenly, having a sister especially, one who's been through what you've been through, it's a lot." Lily shook her hand, relief flooding through her. "I understand. And I'm not asking for anything from you. I don't expect us to be best friends or have some instant bond. I'm glad you don't hate me." "I don't hate you," Jessica said, and she actually smiled a little. "I'm angry at Dad for keeping secrets. I'm devastated about Mom. But you? You're just a person who got dealt a terrible hand and somehow stayed decent anyway. That's not hateable. That's actually kind of impressive." She grabbed her jacket from the back of the couch. "I need to go. Michael is waiting, and we're supposed to be packing for our honeymoon, which I'm now not sure I should go on, given that my family is imploding, but—" She trailed off, looking at Richard. "Should I stay? Do you need me?" "No." Richard's voice was gentle. "Go on your honeymoon. Be happy. Let me deal with the fallout. When you come back, we'll figure out the rest." Jessica nodded, then surprised Lily by pulling her into a quick hug. "Welcome to the family, I guess. Sorry it's such a mess." Then she was gone too, leaving just Richard and Lily in the enormous penthouse that suddenly felt very small. They sat in silence for a long time. "I ruined your marriage," Lily said finally. "No." Richard's voice was firm. "I ruined my marriage. I ruined it 23 years ago when I chose duty over love. When I let Catherine walk away without fighting for her. When I built a life on a foundation of regret. Victoria was right. She deserved better than a husband who was always looking backward. This isn't your fault, Lily. This is consequences finally catching up to choices I made decades ago. But if I hadn't returned the ring, then I never would have found you. Never would have known I had another daughter. Never would have had the chance to be part of your life." Richard turned to face her fully. "Yes, it hurts. Yes, my family is falling apart. But Lily, I would rather know the truth and deal with the consequences than live another day in comfortable ignorance while you suffered." Lily's eyes burned. "What happens now? Now?" Richard took a deep breath. "Now I try to salvage my relationship with Victoria, though I suspect that ship has sailed. Now I help Jessica process this before she leaves for her honeymoon. And now I start being the father I should have been 18 years ago." He reached over and took Lily's hand. "I know this is overwhelming. I know everything has happened so fast. But I meant what I said. You're my daughter. And that means you get everything Jessica got. Education, opportunities, security. A home, a family, even if that family is currently broken. I don't need everything Jessica got, Lily said quietly. I don't need penthouses and designer clothes and— What do you need? Richard interrupted. Tell me, what does Lily Barrett need to feel safe? To feel like she belongs? The question hit her like a physical blow, because the truth was, Lily didn't know. She'd spent so long just surviving that she'd forgotten how to think about thriving, about wanting things beyond the next meal or safe place to sleep. I need time, she said finally. Time to process all of this, to figure out who I am if I'm not just homeless Lily anymore, to understand what it means to have a father and a sister and a life that doesn't revolve around survival. You've got it. Richard squeezed her hand. Take all the time you need. The hotel room is yours for as long as you want it. When you're ready, we'll talk about more permanent arrangements. About education if you want it. About career options. About therapy. Because God knows you probably need it after everything you've been through. Lily laughed, but it came out more like a sob. I definitely need therapy. We all do, Richard said with a rueful smile. Welcome to the Remington family, where everyone is damaged, but at least we can afford good therapists. They sat there for a while longer, father and daughter, both trying to wrap their minds around the future that had just opened up in front of them. A future that was terrifying and promising, and nothing like what either of them had imagined 48 hours ago. Finally, Lily stood up. I should go. Let you deal with everything. Call me if you need anything, Richard said. Anything at all. Day or night. You're not alone anymore, Lily. Remember that. Lily nodded, not trusting her voice, and headed for the door. As she waited for the elevator, her phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. Hey, this is weird, but maybe after my honeymoon, we could get coffee. Talk? Figure out this whole sister thing? No pressure. Lily stared at the message, tears blurring her vision. I'd like that, she typed back. The elevator arrived, and Lily stepped inside, watching the penthouse floor disappear as she descended. In the span of 3 days, she'd gone from homeless to having a family, from invisible to seen, from alone to connected to people who actually wanted to know her. It should have felt like a happy ending. But as the elevator reached the lobby and Lily stepped out into the bustling hotel, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning, that the real challenges were still ahead. Because gaining a family meant having something to lose, meant caring about people who could hurt you, meant opening herself up to the possibility of rejection and disappointment, and all the things she'd learned to live without. But maybe, just maybe, it also meant love, and belonging, and the chance to finally stop running. Lily walked out of the hotel into the crisp October afternoon, the city spreading out before her full of possibilities that hadn't existed 3 days ago. She'd returned a ring and found a father. Now, she just had to figure out what to do with him. 3 weeks had passed since the wedding. 3 weeks since Lily's world had split open and reformed into something unrecognizable. The hotel room had become her temporary home, though temporary was starting to feel like a lie she told herself to avoid getting comfortable. Richard had insisted she stay there while they figured out next steps, a phrase that seemed to encompass everything from where she'd live permanently, to whether she'd pursue her GED, to how they'd navigate the smoking crater, where his marriage used to be. Victoria had moved out of the penthouse within 48 hours of asking for divorce, moved into their Connecticut estate, and hired lawyers who'd apparently been waiting their entire careers for a case this messy. The tabloids had gotten wind of something, not the full story, but enough to run headlines like Remington Empire in Turmoil and Socialite Files for Divorce. After 23 years, Richard's publicist had earned her salary 3 times over keeping Lily's existence out of the press. For now. Jessica and Michael were still on their honeymoon in Bali, blissfully disconnected from the chaos. They'd be back in 4 days, and Lily had no idea what would happen when they returned. If Jessica's tentative acceptance would survive reality, if having a homeless half-sister would become a fun anecdote or an embarrassment to be managed. But today, Lily had other concerns. Today, she was meeting with Dr. Elena Vasquez, the educational consultant Richard had hired to assess where Lily stood academically and what options existed for someone who dropped out of school at 15. The meeting was at a cafe in the West Village neutral territory. Richard had called it, somewhere Lily wouldn't feel trapped or judged. But as she walked through the door, scanning for a woman matching the description Richard had given her, Lily felt both trapped and judged anyway. Lily? A woman stood from a corner table waving. She was in her 40s, with salt and pepper hair pulled into a messy bun, and glasses that made her look more librarian than consultant. She wore jeans and a blazer, somehow managing to look both professional and approachable. "I'm Elena. Thank you for meeting me." Lily slid into the opposite chair, her hands twisting in her lap. "Richard said you wanted to talk about school stuff." "School stuff," Elena smiled. "That's one way to put it. But first, how are you? I know the last few weeks have been intense." It was such an understatement that Lily almost laughed. Intense. Like that word could encompass discovering your father, destroying his marriage, and having your entire identity reconstructed in real time. "I'm fine," Lily said automatically. Elena's eyebrows rose slightly. That's the answer people give when they don't want to talk about how they're actually feeling. But we don't have to start there if you don't want to. Should we order coffee first? I've been told the lattes here are criminally good. They ordered Lily getting a latte because Elena said it was good, not because she had any real opinion on coffee, and then Elena pulled out a folder. "So, your father hired me to help figure out your educational path. But before we talk about options, I need to understand where you're starting from. When did you leave school?" "Freshman year. I was 15. Lily's voice was flat. "My mom died. I went into foster care. The school I was zoned for was terrible, and I stopped going after about 3 months. And before that? How are you doing academically?" Lily shrugged. "Fine. Good, actually. I liked school when my mom was alive. English was my favorite. Math was okay. Science was interesting." Elena made notes. "Have you done any studying since then? Read books? Kept up with anything?" "I spent a lot of time in libraries." Lily found herself relaxing slightly. This wasn't interrogation, it was conversation. They were warm in winter. "And I liked reading. Fiction mostly, some history, whatever was available." "That's actually really important." Elena looked up, her expression serious. "A lot of people in your situation lose their connection to learning entirely. The fact that you maintained it, even informally, tells me something about your resilience, about your priorities." The word resilience made Lily uncomfortable. People kept using it to describe her survival, like suffering was something to be celebrated instead of endured. "I just didn't want to forget who I used to be," Lily said quietly, "before everything fell apart." Elena nodded, understanding flickering in her eyes. "Okay, so here's where we are. You're 18, which means you have several options. GED is the obvious one. It's a high school equivalency test. With your background and the fact that you've kept reading, I think you could probably pass it within a few months of preparation. And then what? Then college, if you want it. Community college, 4-year university, trade school, whatever fits your goals." Elena leaned forward. "But Lily, here's the thing. Your father has the resources to give you opportunities most people don't get. Tutors, test prep. Whatever educational path you choose, you'll have support. The question is, what do you want?" What did she want? Lily had spent so long focused on survival that she'd stopped thinking about wanting anything beyond the next meal. "I don't know," she admitted. "I liked learning when I was younger, but I'm so far behind now. Everyone else my age is graduating college or working real jobs, and I'm just starting. You're not just starting, Elena said firmly. You're starting from a different place than other people, but that doesn't make your journey less valid. And honestly, the fact that you've survived what you have shows a kind of education most college kids never get. Street smarts, problem solving, resource management. Those are real skills. They don't put excellent dumpster diving on college applications, Lily said with bitter humor. Elena laughed, actually laughed, not the polite chuckle Lily was used to getting when she made jokes about her life. No, but they do value resilience, determination, and unique perspectives. Your story is your story, Lily. It's not something to hide. They talked for another hour. About GED prep programs, about community college options, about the possibility of private tutoring to accelerate her learning, about gap years and volunteering and all the paths that existed beyond the traditional school structure. By the end, Lily's head was spinning with possibilities. I'm going to put together a comprehensive plan, Elena said as they prepared to leave. Several options for you to consider. And Lily? There's no rush. You don't have to decide your entire future today. You're allowed to take time figuring out who you want to be. As Lily walked back to her hotel, Elena's words echoed in her mind. Who she wanted to be. Not who circumstances had forced her to become, but who she could choose to be now that she had choices. Her phone buzzed. Richard, how did the meeting go? She stared at the text. A father checking in. A normal thing that felt extraordinary simply because it was happening to her. Good, she typed back. She seems nice. Lots to think about. The response came immediately. Want to talk about it over dinner? I'm free tonight. And there it was again. The casual assumption that she'd want to spend time with him. That they were building something beyond obligation. Sure, Lily responded. They met at a small Italian restaurant. In Midtown, the kind of place that had checkered tablecloths and smelled like garlic, and felt nothing like the plaza. Richard was already there when she arrived, and he stood when he saw her, that automatic gesture of respect that still made Lily uncomfortable. You look good, he said as she sat down, and then, catching himself, sorry, I don't mean that in a weird way. I just mean, you look healthier. Less tired, it was true. 3 weeks of regular meals and sleeping in a bed had softened some of her harder edges. She'd gained weight, good weight. The kind that meant her ribs didn't show through her shirts anymore. Her hair was shiny instead of dull. Her skin had color. Regular food helps, Lily said dryly. They ordered Richard, insisting she try the pasta because it was life-changing, which seemed like hyperbole for noodles, but whatever, and then Richard asked about Elena. Lily told him about the GED plan, about college possibilities, about how overwhelming it all felt to go from having no future to having too many options. I know it's a lot, Richard said, but you don't have to rush. Take your time. Try things. It's okay if you don't have it all figured out at 18. Jessica had it figured out at 18, Lily pointed out. She went to Yale, got a degree in art history, has a job at a gallery now. She had a plan. Jessica had resources and stability. Richard's voice was gentle. You had survival. Those aren't comparable situations, Lily, and honestly, I'm not sure which one taught more valuable lessons. Before Lily could respond, a woman approached their table. Older, dripping in jewelry that screamed old money, with a smile that looked more like a weapon. Richard Remington! I heard you were back in the city. How are you? Her eyes slid to Lily, curiosity naked on her face. And who is this lovely young lady? Lily saw Richard's jaw tighten. This was a test, a choice. He could introduce her as a friend, a mentee, some vague business connection. Could keep her hidden a little longer. This is my daughter, Lily, Richard said clearly. Lily, this is Margaret Whitmore. She sits on several boards with me. Margaret's smile froze. Your daughter? I thought Jessica was in Bali. My other daughter. Richard's voice held an edge that Lily had never heard before. It's a recent development. Long story. But yes, Lily is my daughter. The words hung in the air. Margaret's face cycled through emotions, shock, calculation, barely concealed delight at having gossip to share. Well, how wonderful. I had no idea you had another child, Richard. This is quite the surprise. Life is full of surprises, Richard said flatly. If you'll excuse us, Margaret, we're in the middle of dinner. It was a dismissal. Polite but absolute. Margaret took the hint, made some excuse about needing to find her party, and disappeared. Richard let out a long breath. That's going to be all over the social circuit by tomorrow morning. Hope you're ready for people to start asking questions. Why did you tell her? Lily asked. You could have lied, said I was anyone else. Because I'm done lying. Richard met her eyes. Done hiding you? Done pretending my life is perfect when it's built on secrets? Yes, it's going to cause gossip. Yes, people are going to ask invasive questions. But Lily, you're my daughter. I'm not ashamed of that. And I won't act like I am. Something in Lily's chest cracked open. A small fissure that let in a dangerous amount of hope. The divorce is going to be brutal, she said quietly. Probably. Richard's smile was grim. Victoria's lawyers are already circling, asking about assets, about the prenup, about whether discovering a secret child constitutes fraud or something equally ridiculous. But that's my problem, not yours. It's my fault, though. No. Richard's voice was firm. It's my fault for marrying someone I didn't love enough, for building a life on a shaky foundation, for letting Catherine walk away without fighting. Those were my choices. You're just the consequence that finally made me face them. Their food arrived, and they ate in companionable silence for a while. The pasta was, Lily had to admit, pretty life-changing. Jessica comes back in 4 days, Richard said eventually. I thought maybe the 3 of us could have dinner. Start figuring out what this family looks like going forward. Family. The word still felt foreign in Lily's mouth. What if she changed her mind? Lily voiced the fear that had been circling her thoughts for weeks. What if being away gave her time to realize she doesn't want a homeless sister? That I'm too complicated, too messy? Then we'll deal with it. Richard set down his fork. But Lily, Jessica is a good person. She's had her entire worldview challenged, and she's processing. That doesn't mean she's going to reject you. Give her a chance. Lily nodded, not entirely convinced, but willing to pretend. They finished dinner, and Richard paid, waving off Lily's automatic offer to split the check, which was ridiculous because she had no money anyway. But old habits died hard. Outside the restaurant, Richard's car was waiting. But instead of getting in, he turned to Lily. I want to show you something. Do you have time? Lily shrugged. I've got nothing but time. They walked. Through Midtown's glittering chaos, past restaurants and theaters and tourists taking photos, and then they turned onto a quieter street, and Richard stopped in front of a brownstone. It was beautiful. 4 stories of red brick and big windows, with a small garden out front that someone clearly maintained with care. The kind of building that whispered old money and generational wealth. What is this? Lily asked. It was my grandmother's, Richard said. She died 5 years ago and left it to me. I've been renting it out to a family, but their lease is up next month. And I was thinking... He paused, choosing his words carefully. I was thinking maybe you'd want to live here. Lily stared at him. What? Not alone, at least not at first. I could hire staff, or I could stay here sometimes if you wanted company. But Lily, the hotel is temporary. You need a real home. And this place is just sitting here. It seems like it should be yours. I can't afford a brownstone in Manhattan, Lily said, her voice flat. You're not paying for it. It's mine. And now it's yours. If you want it. The casual way he said it, like gifting a multi-million-dollar property, was the same as lending someone a jacket, made Lily want to scream. I can't just take a brownstone from you. Why not? Richard genuinely seemed confused. Lily, I have money. More money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. And you're my daughter. This is what parents do. They give their children homes and security and futures. Let me do this, because it's too much. Lily's voice rose. Hotel rooms and clothes and dinner and college plans, fine. But a whole building? That's not normal. That's not normal is overrated. Richard's voice was steady. And nothing about our situation is normal. But you deserve a home, Lily. A real home. Not a hotel room. Not a shelter. A place that's yours. Lily looked at the brownstone at the windows glowing warmly from within, at the life she could have if she just said yes. And she felt the old fear rising, because accepting this meant depending on Richard, meant trusting that he wouldn't change his mind, meant building a life that could be taken away if DNA tests were wrong or if he decided she was too much trouble. I need time, she said finally, to think about it. Take all the time you need, Richard said. But Lily, I'm not going anywhere. This isn't charity. This is being your father. They walked back to the car in silence, and Richard dropped her at her hotel with a promise to call in a few days about the dinner with Jessica. Lily rode the elevator to her floor, walked into her room, and finally let herself feel the full weight of the day. She had educational options. She had a father who'd claimed her publicly. She had the possibility of a home that didn't have wheels or smell like mildew. She had everything she'd dreamed about during those freezing nights in subway stations. So why did it still feel like she was waiting for the other shoe to drop? Lily pulled out her phone and scrolled through the photos she'd taken over the last few weeks. Richard at dinner, the view from the hotel window, her new clothes hanging in the closet. Evidence that this was real, that her life had actually changed. But in the back of her mind, a voice whispered, "Nothing this good lasts. People leave, homes disappear, and girls like you don't get fairy tale endings." Lily silenced the voice and climbed into bed, her expensive, comfortable, temporary bed, and tried to believe in a future where she wasn't waiting for everything to crumble. Tomorrow, she'd call Elena and pick an educational path. Tomorrow, she'd maybe look at the brownstone again. Tomorrow, she'd start building a life instead of just surviving one. But tonight, she let herself be scared, let herself doubt, let herself feel all the ways this could go wrong. Because the truth was, having something to lose was terrifying. And for the first time in 3 years, Lily Barrett had everything to lose. Jessica's text came at 7 a.m. the day after she returned from Bali. "Coffee. Today? I know it's early, but I'm jet-lagged and we should talk." Lily stared at her phone, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. This was it. The moment when Jessica would either accept her or politely distance herself with the kind of educated cruelty wealthy people specialized in. "Where?" Lily typed back. The response was immediate. "That place in the village Dad took you to. Elena's recommendation. 10 a.m.? Lily spent the next 3 hours in a state of controlled panic. She changed outfits 4 times, settling finally on jeans and a sweater that said, "I'm trying, but not too hard." She practiced conversations in the mirror, then felt ridiculous, and stopped. She left the hotel too early and walked the streets of Manhattan until it was time, burning off nervous energy that had nowhere else to go. When she arrived at the cafe, Jessica was already there. She looked different, tanned from 2 weeks in Bali, her blonde hair lighter from sun exposure. But more than that, she looked tired. The kind of tired that came from thinking too much, sleeping too little, carrying weight you couldn't put down. "Hey," Jessica said as Lily approached. Not quite a smile, but not hostile either. Neutral territory. "Hey." Lily slid into the opposite chair, her hands already twisting in her lap, a nervous habit she couldn't seem to break. They ordered coffee, Jessica getting some complicated thing with oat milk and vanilla, Lily getting regular coffee because making decisions was hard enough without adding 20 customization options. Silence stretched between them, awkward and heavy. "So," Jessica said finally, "half-sisters." "That's weird, right?" "Extremely weird," Lily agreed. "I spent most of my honeymoon processing it." Jessica's laugh had sharp edges. "Michael was very patient about me having existential crises in paradise. Really set the tone for our marriage. Sorry, honey. Can't enjoy this beautiful beach. Too busy dealing with family trauma." "I'm sorry." The words came automatically. "I didn't mean to ruin your honeymoon." "You didn't ruin it." Jessica's voice softened. "Dad did. Mom did. Their whole dysfunctional situation did. You were just the catalyst, the thing that made everyone finally deal with reality." The waitress brought their drinks. Lily wrapped her hands around her mug, grateful for something to hold on to. "I talked to Mom while I was away," Jessica continued. "She's furious. At Dad. At the situation. At everything. But not at you, actually. She said you were just a victim in all this. That none of it is your fault." Lily looked up sharply. "Really? Really? Victoria Remington might be a lot of things, but she's not cruel enough to blame an 18-year-old for her husband's choices." Jessica took a sip of her fancy coffee. "Though she did make it very clear that she never wants to see you. That you're a reminder of Dad's great lost love and his decades of emotional dishonesty." The words stung, even though Lily had expected them. Being called a reminder made her feel like an object instead of a person. "I don't want to be a reminder," Lily said quietly. "I don't want to be the thing that destroyed your family." "Our family was already destroyed." Jessica's voice was matter-of-fact. "It just looked pretty from the outside. Dad spent 23 years emotionally checked out. Mom spent 23 years pretending it didn't matter. And I spent 27 years thinking my parents' cold, polite marriage was normal. You didn't destroy anything, Lily. You just exposed the cracks." Lily didn't know what to say to that, so she sipped her coffee and waited. Jessica studied her for a long moment. "Tell me what it was like." "Actually like living on the streets." The request was so direct it caught Lily off guard. "Why do you want to know?" "Because I need to understand." Jessica leaned forward. "I need to understand who you are beyond Dad's secret daughter. I need to know what your life was like while mine was Yale classes and trust funds and worrying about whether my wedding dress fit right." So Lily told her. Not the sanitized version she'd given Richard. The real version, about sleeping in subway stations where it was warm but never safe. About men who looked at homeless girls like they were prey. About eating from dumpsters behind restaurants and getting food poisoning so bad she'd thought she might die. About libraries and shelters and the careful mathematics of survival. About the profound loneliness of being invisible. Of having thousands of people walk past you every day and never quite see you as human. Jessica listened without interrupting. By the time Lily finished, there were tears streaming down Jessica's face. "I'm sorry," Jessica whispered. "I'm so sorry you went through that. I'm sorry we had everything while you had nothing. I'm sorry the universe is that fucking unfair. It's not your fault." "I know it's not my fault." Jessica wiped her eyes with a napkin. "But that doesn't make it less terrible. And it doesn't make me less angry that this could happen. That the system could fail someone so completely." They sat in silence for a while, both processing. "Dad wants us to have dinner," Jessica said eventually. "The three of us. Start figuring out what this family looks like now." "Do you want that?" Lily asked. "Or are you just doing it because he asked?" Jessica considered the question seriously. "Both, maybe? I'm still mad at him. Still processing. But you," she paused, "you didn't choose any of this. And I keep thinking, if our situations were reversed, if you'd grown up with money, and I'd been on the streets, would you hate me? Would you resent me for having what should have been yours?" "I don't hate you," Lily said. "I'm jealous sometimes. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't. But I don't hate you." "Good." because I don't hate you either." Jessica's smile was tentative, but real. "I'm confused and overwhelmed and still kind of angry at the universe. But you seem like a decent person who got dealt a terrible hand. And maybe I don't know. Maybe we could try to be sisters? Actual sisters, not just DNA?" Hope bloomed in Lily's chest, dangerous and bright. "I'd like that. It won't be easy," Jessica warned. "I've been an only child my whole life. I'm probably going to be selfish and territorial and weird about sharing Dad's attention. And you've been alone so long you probably won't know how to let people in. We're both going to mess this up a lot." "Probably," Lily agreed. "But maybe we can mess it up together." Jessica held out her hand across the table. "Sisters. Weird, complicated, traumatized sisters." Lily took her hand. "Sisters." They finished their coffee and decided to walk through the village. Jessica wanted to show Lily her favorite vintage shops places she'd been going to since college, back when she'd had time for things like browsing and not wedding planning or honeymoon crisis management. "Dad showed me the brownstone," Lily said as they walked. "The one he wants to give me." Jessica stopped walking. "He offered you Grandma's brownstone? You knew about it?" "Of course I knew about it. I've been asking him for years if I could rent it, maybe fix it up as an investment property. He always said no, that it was too special to his grandmother's memory." Jessica's voice was carefully neutral. "And now he's just giving it to you." Lily's stomach dropped. This was it, the resentment, the reality that she was getting things Jessica had wanted, stealing resources that should have been hers. But then Jessica laughed. Not angry, genuine. "You know what? Good. You need it more than I do. I have an apartment. I have options. And honestly, the idea of Dad finally letting someone live there instead of just keeping it as a shrine, that's actually kind of healthy. Growth? You're not mad?" "Oh, I'm definitely a little mad." Jessica started walking again. "But not at you. At the situation. At the fact that you need to be given a home. Because you don't have one. That's what's infuriating, not that you're getting something, but that you need it in the first place." They ducked into a vintage shop, and Jessica immediately started pulling clothes off racks. "You need more outfits. Dad probably bought you basics, but you need fun stuff too. Come on." For the next hour, Lily tried on clothes while Jessica played stylist. She had an eye for it, knowing what would work with Lily's frame. What colors made her look alive instead of washed out? "This," Jessica said, holding up a leather jacket that had clearly been expensive once and was still expensive now, even second-hand. "This is perfect. Very downtown cool. Very, I've been through hell, but I'm still standing." Lily looked at the price tag and balked. "I can't." "My treat." Jessica was already at the register. "Consider it a welcome to the family gift, or an apology for the universe being terrible gift, or just a sister gift, whatever makes you comfortable accepting it." They left the shop with bags full of clothes, and Lily felt something unfamiliar settling in her chest. Not quite happiness that felt too big, too dangerous, but maybe contentment. Maybe belonging. "Want to see my apartment?" Jessica asked. "It's close. Michael's at work, so it's just me. We could order lunch, hang out." Lily nodded, unable to quite believe this was happening. That Jessica, beautiful, privileged Jessica, who had every reason to resent her, wanted to spend time with her. The apartment was in a renovated building in Soho, all exposed brick and huge windows. It was stylish, in that effortless way wealthy people managed antique furniture mixed with modern art. Plants that actually stayed alive, a Kit Clark that looked like it belonged in a magazine. "I know it's excessive," Jessica said, reading Lily's expression. "Michael and I both have trust funds. We don't need to work, but we both do anyway because not working makes you weird. But yeah, we're disgustingly privileged. I won't insult you by pretending otherwise." They ordered Thai food and ate sitting on the floor by the window, looking out at Soho's afternoon bustle. "What do you want to do?" Jessica asked. "Like with your life, now that you have options?" Lily had been asking herself that question for weeks. "I don't know yet. I met with an educational consultant. She thinks I should get my GED, maybe go to college. But the idea of going back to school at 18 when I'm so far behind everyone else? Who cares if you're behind? Jessica's voice was firm. There's no timeline for life, Lily. No rule that says you have to have it figured out by a certain age. Take your time. Try things. See what sticks. What do you do? Dad said you work at a gallery? Yeah, the Caldwell Gallery in Chelsea. It's small, prestigious, and run by someone who used to be Mom's college roommate, so I absolutely got the job through nepotism. Jessica's smile was wry. But I'm good at it. I have an eye for art, and I like helping artists get recognition. It feels like, I don't know, like I'm using my privilege for something good. They talked for hours, about art and books and what movies they liked, about Jessica's wedding and honeymoon, about Michael, who sounded like a genuinely good person despite his trust fund, about what it was like growing up Remington versus growing up Barrett, and slowly, tentatively, they started building something. Not a perfect sister relationship, those didn't exist, but a real one. Complicated and messy and honest. I should go, Lily said finally, noticing the time. It's getting late. Okay, but Lily? Jessica walked her to the door. Let's do this again. Soon. Maybe next week? We could get dinner, or see a movie, or just hang out. Start actually being sisters, instead of just biology experiments. I'd like that, Lily said, and she meant it. On the walk back to her hotel, Lily's phone buzzed with a text from Richard. How did it go with Jessica? Good, Lily typed back. Really good, actually. The response came quickly. I'm glad. Dinner this weekend? All three of us. Lily hesitated, then committed. Yes, I'm ready. She wasn't sure if that was true, but she was willing to try, willing to build this fragile, complicated family from the wreckage of secrets and lies. Because for the first time since her mother died, Lily wasn't alone. She had a father, a sister. Possibilities. She had a future that extended beyond survival. And maybe she could learn to trust it, wouldn't all disappear. The dinner was supposed to be simple. Just Richard, Jessica, and Lily at a quiet restaurant, navigating their new family dynamic over pasta and wine. Instead, it turned into the night. Everything came crashing down. They'd made it through appetizers without incident. Jessica had told funny stories about her honeymoon. Richard had shared updates about the divorce proceedings. Lily had mostly listened, still getting used to the idea of casual family dinners. And then Victoria Remington walked into the restaurant. She wasn't alone. Behind her strode a tall woman with severe features and a leather portfolio that screamed, "Lawyer." And behind them, a man with a camera. Richard! Victoria's voice cut through the ambient restaurant noise like a blade. How convenient running into you here. It clearly wasn't convenient. This was planned, calculated, designed for maximum impact. Richard stood slowly. Victoria, this isn't the time or place. Oh, I think it's exactly the time and place. Victoria's smile was razor-sharp. After all, you're here having a cozy family dinner with your secret daughter, the one you conveniently discovered right after I asked for a divorce. How fortunate. The lawyer stepped forward. Mr. Remington, we've been trying to reach you about the disclosure requirements in your divorce proceedings, specifically about assets you may have hidden or transferred. I haven't hidden anything, Richard said, his voice tight. Haven't you? Victoria's eyes were ice. A brownstone, given to your mistress's daughter. That's a multi-million-dollar asset transfer, Richard. One you failed to disclose. The restaurant had gone quiet. Other diners were watching now, sensing drama. Lily felt her chest constrict. This was her fault. The brownstone, the dinner, all of it, her presence, was the match that lit this fire. Lily isn't my mistress's daughter, Richard said, and his voice carried. She's my daughter, from a relationship I had before marrying Victoria. And yes, I offered her the brownstone, That's what fathers do for their children. Convenient timing, though. The lawyer's voice was clinical. Discovering this supposed daughter right when your marriage is ending. Right when asset division is being discussed. The DNA test is real, Richard snapped. I can provide documentation. Documentation can be falsified, Victoria said. And I'm sure you can understand my skepticism. This girl appears out of nowhere, claims to be your daughter, and suddenly you're transferring property worth millions? Lily couldn't breathe. The walls were closing in. Everyone was staring. Stop! Jessica's voice rang out, surprising everyone, including herself. She stood up, her chair scraping back. This is ridiculous, Mom. The DNA test is real. Lily is Dad's daughter. And you know it. You're just pretending to have doubts because it serves your divorce strategy. Victoria's composure cracked slightly. Jessica. No. Jessica's hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. I'm not going to sit here and watch you try to discredit Lily because you're angry at Dad. She didn't ask for any of this. She was homeless, Mom, literally homeless. And you're acting like she's some gold digger who manufactured a relationship? I'm protecting our family assets, Victoria said coldly, which you'll thank me for when you see how much money your father is about to waste on his guilt project. The words hung in the air like poison. Guilt project. That's what Lily was to Victoria. Not a person. Not Richard's daughter. A guilt project. I'm leaving. Lily stood up abruptly, her chair nearly tipping over. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come. Lily, wait. Richard reached for her, but she was already moving. She pushed past Victoria and her lawyer, past the photographer who was definitely taking pictures, past the curious diners who would definitely tell this story later. She made it outside before the panic attack hit fully. Her breath came in short gasps. Her vision narrowed. The street tilted and spun. Lily! Jessica appeared beside her, her hand on Lily's back. Breathe. Just breathe. In and out. You're okay. But she wasn't okay. She was a guilt project, a charity case, a problem to be managed in divorce proceedings. I need to go, Lily managed between gasps. You need to sit down before you pass out. Jessica guided her to a bench outside the restaurant. Come on, sit. Breathe with me. In for 4, out for 4. They sat there, breathing together while inside the restaurant. Raised voices indicated that Richard and Victoria were still arguing. Lily's breathing slowly normalized. The street came back into focus. Jessica's hand stayed steady on her back. I'm sorry, Lily whispered. Stop apologizing. Jessica's voice was fierce. None of this is your fault. Mom is angry and lashing out. The lawyer is doing lawyer things. And that photographer is probably from some gossip rag Victoria hired to make Dad look bad. But you're just a person trying to exist. Richard emerged from the restaurant, his face flushed with anger. Victoria and her entourage didn't follow, probably still inside, regrouping for their next attack. Lily. He crouched in front of her, his eyes full of concern. Are you okay? Am I a guilt project? The question came out small and broken. What? No. God, no. Richard looked stricken. Victoria said that because she's angry and hurting and wants to cause maximum damage. But Lily, you are my daughter. Not a project. Not charity. My daughter. She doesn't believe the DNA test is real, Lily said flatly. She thinks I'm lying, that we're lying. She believes it, Jessica interjected. She's just pretending not to because it's a better legal strategy. Makes Dad look impulsive and stupid, transferring assets to someone who might be a con artist. It's all theater, Lily. Expensive, ugly theater. Richard ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Lily was starting to recognize as his tell for stress. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Victoria's out for blood, and she's going to use every weapon she has, including trying to discredit you. Then maybe I should leave. Lily's voice was hollow. Go back to, I don't know, somewhere. Anywhere but here. If I'm gone, she can't use me against you. No. Richard and Jessica said it simultaneously. You're not running, Richard continued. That's what Victoria wants for you to disappear, so she can paint this whole thing as a temporary insanity on my part. But you're not going anywhere. We're going to face this together. As a family. That word again, it should have brought comfort, but right now it just felt like a weight. The photographer got pictures, Lily said, of all of us. This is going to be in the tabloids, isn't it? Richard's jaw tightened. Probably. My publicist will do damage control, but yes, this story is going to get out. And when it does, people are going to ask questions. About you, about Catherine, about everything. I don't want to be a news story, Lily whispered. I know, but Lily, listen to me. Richard took her hands. The story will break whether you're here or not. But if you stay, we can control the narrative. Tell the truth. Make it clear you're not some opportunist, you're my daughter who deserved better than what life gave her. And if people don't believe it, then they don't believe it. Jessica sat down on the bench next to Lily. But the people who matter, Dad, me, the people who actually know you, will know the truth. That has to be enough. A cab pulled up, and Victoria emerged from the restaurant with her lawyer and photographer. She spotted them on the bench and paused, something flickering across her face. For just a moment, Lily saw past the anger to something else. Pain. Betrayal. The wound of loving someone who'd never fully loved her back. Then Victoria's mask slammed back into place, and she climbed into the cab without another word. Come on, Richard said quietly. Let's go back to my place. We can regroup there, figure out next steps. They took Richard's car to his penthouse, not the family one he'd shared with Victoria, but a corporate apartment he'd been using since the separation. It was sterile and soulless, all modern furniture and no personal touches. Richard poured himself a drink, actually drank it this time, while Jessica and Lily sat on the couch. My publicist is already calling, Richard said, checking his phone. Apparently, someone at the restaurant tipped off page 6. The story will be online within the hour. What will it say? Lily asked. Probably some version of Remington's secret love child emerges during messy divorce. Richard's voice was bitter. They'll make it sound like a scandal. Like you're some skeleton in my closet instead of my daughter. Jessica pulled out her own phone. It's already trending on Twitter. Done a Remington scandal. People are speculating about everything, whether you're actually Dad's daughter, whether this is a scam, whether Mom knew about you all along. Lily felt sick. Thousands of strangers were discussing her life, judging her, making assumptions about who she was and what she wanted. I need air, she said abruptly, standing up. The balcony, Richard gestured. Through that door. Lily stepped outside into the cold October night. The city sprawled below her, millions of lights representing millions of lives that had nothing to do with her drama. It should have been comforting a reminder that she was small, that this would pass. But instead, it just made her feel more alone. The balcony door opened behind her. Jessica. You okay? Jessica asked, though they both knew the answer. Not really. Lily gripped the railing. 3 weeks ago, I was invisible. Nobody knew my name. Nobody cared where I came from. And now I'm a trending topic. A scandal. The bastard daughter who destroyed a marriage? You didn't destroy anything, Jessica said firmly. That marriage was dead long before you showed up. You just made everyone face it. Does that make it better? Lily's voice cracked. Knowing I'm the catalyst for all this pain? Jessica was quiet for a moment. When I was 10, Mom and Dad had this huge fight. I don't remember what it was about something with Dad's company. Probably. But Mom said something I've never forgotten. She said, I'm tired of being the consolation prize. And Dad went completely silent. And I realized, even at 10, that she was right. That he'd married her because he was supposed to, not because he loved her enough. She moved to stand beside Lily at the railing. So no, you didn't destroy their marriage. You just revealed what was already true. And yeah, it's painful. It's messy. It's going to get worse before it gets better. But Lily, truth matters, even when it hurts. I don't feel like truth, Lily said quietly. I feel like a bomb. Maybe you're both. Jessica's smile was sad. Maybe that's what happens when secrets get big enough. Truth becomes explosive. They stood there in silence. Two sisters who barely knew each other, united by the chaos they'd inherited. What happens now? Lily finally asked. Now we weather the storm, Jessica said. The tabloids will have their field day. Mom's lawyers will keep attacking. People will have opinions. But eventually, something else will become the story. And we'll still be here. Still be family. Still be figuring this out. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's terrible and complicated, and there's no roadmap. Jessica turned to face her. But Lily, I meant what I said earlier. You're my sister, and I'm not going anywhere, even when it's hard, even when it's ugly, even when Mom's lawyers are calling you a fraud, and the internet is having meltdowns. You're stuck with me. Something in Lily's chest loosened. Just a little, just enough to breathe. Thank you, she whispered. They went back inside, where Richard was on the phone with his publicist, crafting a statement. Something about recently discovering, a daughter from a previous relationship, and taking time as a family to navigate this transition and other corporate speak, designed to make scandals sound respectable. No, Richard was saying into the phone. We're not hiding her. Yes, I know that makes it harder. I don't care. She's my daughter, not a PR problem to be managed. He hung up and looked at them both. The statement goes out in 20 minutes. After that, expect calls, emails, people trying to get your story, Lily. Offers from tabloids. The works. What do I do? Lily asked. Nothing. Say nothing. My publicist will handle media requests. And, Lily, change your phone number. Today. Before people track it down. The next few hours were a blur. Richard's publicist arrived with a new phone for Lily. Jessica helped her transfer important contacts. They ordered food. None of them ate and watched as the internet exploded with speculation. The photos from the restaurant were everywhere. Lily caught glimpses of herself looking young and scared, and so obviously out of place in that expensive restaurant. The comments ranged from sympathetic to vicious. She's clearly his daughter. Look at the eyes. Gold digger. Obvious scam. That poor girl. Imagine discovering your father like this. The Remingtons deserve each other. What a mess. Lily made herself stop reading after the 10th comment calling her trailer trash. You okay? Richard asked, noticing her expression. People think I'm a con artist, Lily said flatly. Some people think the earth is flat. Doesn't make them right. Richard's voice was gentle. Lily, there will always be people who doubt, who assume the worst. But the people who matter know the truth. Do they, though? Lily looked at him. Victoria doesn't. Her lawyers don't. Half of Manhattan society probably doesn't. Then we prove them wrong, Richard said. Not by arguing or defending, just by living. By you building a life. By us being a family. Eventually, the truth becomes obvious. Lily wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that truth and time would fix this. But she'd lived long enough to know that some stains never washed out. That being called a con artist, even falsely, changed how people saw you forever. Her new phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Elena. Richard gave me your new number. I saw the news. I'm so sorry you're dealing with this, but I want you to know I'm still here. Still ready to help with your education whenever you're ready. This doesn't change anything about who you are or what you're capable of. Hang in there. Lily read the text 3 times, her eyes burning. Someone believed in her. Someone who didn't have to, who had nothing to gain from it. Just believed. It's going to be okay, Jessica said quietly, reading over her shoulder. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you have people in your corner. Real people. Not just DNA people who choose to be here. Lily nodded, not trusting her voice. They stayed at Richard's apartment until midnight, when exhaustion finally won over anxiety. Richard arranged for cars to take them both home, Jessica to her apartment, Lily to her hotel. As Lily climbed into bed in her hotel room, her phone lit up with one more message. This one from Richard. I'm proud of you. For staying. For being brave. For being exactly who you are, despite everything trying to make you small. Sleep well, Lily. Tomorrow, we keep fighting. Lily set the phone aside and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, they'd keep fighting. Fighting Victoria's lawyers. Fighting public opinion. Fighting the narrative that she was anything other than what she was, a girl who'd returned a ring and found a family. But tonight, she let herself feel the weight of it. The fear, the doubt, the exhaustion of becoming a public figure when all she'd wanted was to be seen by one person. And as she finally drifted off to sleep, one thought circled her mind. This was only the beginning. The real battle for her identity, her place in this family, her right to exist in this world was just starting, and Lily Barrett had no idea if she was strong enough to survive it. The story broke wide open over the next 48 hours, not just celebrity gossip sites, actual news outlets. Remington heir discovers secret daughter during divorce proceedings. Homeless teen claims to be billionaire's child. The ring that changed everything. Inside Manhattan's most shocking family drama. Some articles were sympathetic. They focused on Lily's survival story, painting her as a modern Cinderella. Others were skeptical, questioning the timing and suggesting she was a sophisticated scammer who'd manipulated a grieving widower's guilt. The worst ones tried to dig into her past, tracked down former foster families who gave interviews about troubled Lily and her difficult behavior, found people from shelters who remembered her, though their memories seemed conveniently dramatic for print. Someone even located a teacher from before. Her mother died, who said Lily had always seemed like she was looking for attention. Richard's legal team worked overtime, sending cease and desist letters and threatening defamation suits. But the damage was done. Lily's life, her trauma, her struggles, her survival had been turned into content, into clicks, into a narrative she had no control over. She stopped leaving the hotel after the second day, when a photographer caught her buying coffee, and the photo ended up on TMZ with the caption, "Remington's daughter enjoys luxury hotel life." "I was buying coffee," Lily said to Jessica during one of their daily calls. "Just coffee. And they made it sound like I was living in decadence." "They're going to spin everything," Jessica said. "That's what they do. Try not to read it, Lily. I know that's almost impossible, but try." But Lily couldn't stop. She read every article, every comment, every hot take, watched as strangers debated her existence, saw people she'd never met claim to know her character based on a few photos and second-hand stories. The DNA test results leaked Richard suspected Victoria's legal team, though nothing could be proven. A medical document that should have been private became public knowledge. Some people said it proved Lily was genuine. Others claimed DNA tests could be faked. You couldn't win. That was the lesson. No amount of truth would satisfy people who'd already decided you were lying. On day 5 of her self-imposed hotel isolation, there was a knock at the door. Lily checked the peephole and saw Jessica holding shopping bags. "I come bearing gifts," Jessica announced when Lily opened the door. "And also a reality check. You can't hide in here forever." "I can try," Lily muttered, but she let Jessica in. Jessica set the bags down and surveyed Lily with a critical eye. "When's the last time you showered?" "Yesterday, maybe the day before." Time had gotten weird. Hotel rooms did that, made days blend together. "Okay, here's what's happening. You're going to shower. Then you're going to put on one of the outfits I brought. Then we're going to leave this room." "I can't go out there," Lily said. "There are photographers. People recognize me now. I know. That's why we're going to face it. Jessica's voice was firm. Lily, I know this is terrifying, but hiding just makes the story bigger, makes you look guilty. We need to show them you're a real person living your life, not some scandal to be dissected. I don't know how to do that. Nobody does at first. But I grew up with this photographers, gossip, people having opinions about your life. And I can teach you how to handle it, how to survive it. Jessica pulled clothes from the bags. Come on, shower. I'll make coffee. 20 minutes later, Lily emerged clean and dressed in jeans and a sweater Jessica had chosen. Simple, normal. The kind of outfit that said, I'm just a person, rather than, I'm either a victim or a villain, depending on your perspective. Better, Jessica approved. Now, we're going to walk to the cafe 3 blocks from here. We're going to get lunch, and if photographers show up, we're going to smile politely and keep walking. No hiding, no running, just existing. What if people say things? They probably will. We ignore them. The goal isn't to convince everyone you're genuine. That's impossible. The goal is to live your life despite them, to refuse to be reduced to a scandal. They left the hotel together. Lily's heart hammered as they stepped onto the sidewalk. But nothing happened. Just normal Manhattan bustle. People going about their lives, barely noticing 2 women walking down the street. They made it a block before Lily heard it. That's her, the Remington girl. 2 women across the street, pointing. One pulled out her phone. Lily's instinct was to run, to hide her face, to disappear. But Jessica linked their arms together and kept walking. Breathe. Just keep walking. You're doing great. They made it to the cafe, ordered sandwiches, sat at a table by the window where anyone could see them. This is horrible, Lily muttered. I know, but you're doing it. That's what matters. Jessica took a bite of her sandwich. When I was 16, there were rumors I was in rehab. Completely false. I'd just had mono and missed a month of school. But the tabloids ran with it. Remington heiress spirals out of control. It was everywhere. What did you do? At first, hid, cried, begged my parents to sue everyone. But Dad said something that stuck with me. He said, you can't control what people say about you. You can only control who you actually are. So I went back to school, went to parties, lived my life, and eventually, when nothing dramatic happened, the story died. This feels different, Lily said. This is bigger. It is bigger. But the principle is the same. You outlast the story by refusing to be just the story. Jessica's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression shifted. Dad wants to know if we're free tonight. He has something to tell us. Both of us. Lily's stomach dropped. That sounds ominous. Probably is, but we'll deal with it together. They finished lunch without further incident. Just a few stares. A couple of phones pointed their direction. Nothing catastrophic. Walking back, Lily felt something shift. Not confidence exactly, but maybe the beginning of resilience. The understanding that she could survive being looked at, being judged, being known. That evening, they met Richard at his corporate apartment. He looked exhausted, tie loose, shirt wrinkled, the kind of tired that came from fighting battles on multiple fronts. Thank you both for coming, he said, pouring himself a drink. I have news. Some good, some complicated. Start with the good, Jessica suggested, settling onto the couch. Victoria has agreed to mediation rather than a prolonged court battle. Her lawyers finally convinced her that a public trial would damage everyone involved, including her. So we'll settle privately. That's good, right? Lily asked, in theory. But the settlement demands are... Richard grimaced. Significant. She wants the Connecticut estate, half of several investment portfolios, and a rather astronomical monthly payment. Plus various assets I didn't even know she considered hers, Jessica whistled. She's really going for blood. Can you blame her? Richard's voice was hollow. I spent 23 years emotionally checked out of our marriage. She deserves compensation for that, even if the legal system doesn't phrase it that way. What about the brownstone? Lily asked quietly. Is she still fighting the transfer? That's the complicated part. Richard set down his glass. Her lawyers are arguing that any property transfer to you within the last 6 months should be voided as attempted asset hiding, which means I can't officially transfer the brownstone until the divorce is finalized. Lily's heart sank. So I can't live there. You can't own it yet. But you can live there. Richard's expression softened. The current tenants move out next week. I'll have it furnished, and you can move in. It just won't legally be yours until the divorce is settled, which could take months. I don't need to own it, Lily said. I don't need— Stop. Jessica cut her off. Stop minimizing what you deserve. You're Dad's daughter. You've been homeless for 3 years. You deserve a place to live without conditions or apologies. Lily wanted to argue, but the exhaustion was too heavy. She just nodded. There's more, Richard continued. I've been approached by several news outlets requesting exclusive interviews. They want our side of the story. Want to hear directly from us, particularly from you, Lily, about what really happened. Absolutely not, Lily said immediately. That was my initial response too, Richard agreed. But my publicist makes a compelling argument. Right now, the narrative is being written by tabloids and Victoria's leaked information. We're losing the PR battle because we're not fighting back. An interview controlled, carefully managed could change that. Or it could make everything worse, Lily countered. Give them more ammunition, more quotes to take out of context. That's the risk, Richard acknowledged. But Lily, they're writing your story anyway. At least in an interview, you'd be telling it yourself. In your own words, Jessica looked between them. What does your publicist suggest? A profile in a legitimate publication. Not tabloid something like The Times or The New Yorker. A long-form piece that tells the full story. Catherine and Sarah. Lily's childhood. Her survival. The ring, all of it. Honest and complete. The idea made Lily's skin crawl. Sitting down with a journalist, unpacking her trauma for public consumption, turning her mother's death and her years on the streets into content. I need to think about it, she said finally. Take your time. But Lily thinks seriously, because this story isn't going away. And you can either let other people tell it, or you can tell it yourself. They ordered dinner and tried to talk about other things. Jessica's work at the gallery, Michael's new project, the weather. But the weight of decisions hung over everything. When Lily finally left to go back to her hotel, Richard walked her to the car. I know this is overwhelming, he said. I know you didn't sign up for any of this. But Lily, I want you to know something. However this plays out, whatever you decide about the interview, about the brownstone, about all of it, I'm proud of you. For what? Lily's voice was bitter. For accidentally becoming a tabloid story? For surviving. For maintaining your integrity. For not running when things got hard. Richard's eyes were intense. You could have disappeared after that dinner with Victoria. Could have taken the money I'd already given you and vanished. A lot of people would have. But you stayed. You faced this. That takes courage. Lily didn't feel courageous. She felt trapped. But she didn't say that. Back at the hotel, she found an envelope that had been slipped under her door. Inside, a handwritten note on expensive stationery. Lily, I realize reaching out like this is unorthodox, but I wanted you to know that not everyone believes the worst. I'm a friend of your father's. We serve on several boards together. And I wanted to offer you something. If you decide to pursue education, my family's foundation provides scholarships for non-traditional students, young people who've faced significant challenges and are looking for a second chance. I don't know what your plans are, or if you've even thought that far ahead, but you deserve opportunities, and I'd be honored to help provide them. Please don't feel any obligation to respond. I just wanted you to know that possibilities exist, that not everyone sees you as a scandal. With warmth, Eleanor Clark, Lily read the note 3 times, tears blurring the words. A stranger. Someone who owed her nothing, believed in her, saw potential instead of problems. She set the note on the nightstand and stared at her reflection in the dark window. The girl looking back was so different from the one who'd found a ring 4 weeks ago. Better fed, better dressed, but somehow more lost, because that girl in the alley had known who she was. Homeless Lily. Survivor Lily. Lily who had nothing but her integrity. This new Lily Remington's daughter, tabloid scandal, girl caught between two worlds, she didn't know who she was yet. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. "You still up?" "Yeah," Lily responded. The call came immediately. "I've been thinking about the interview," Jessica said without preamble. "And I think you should do it." "You do?" "Yeah, but on your terms. You pick the journalist. You pick what you share. You control the narrative instead of letting it control you." Jessica paused. "And I'll do it with you. We'll do a joint interview. Sisters presenting a united front. That way, you're not alone in it. You do that?" Lily's voice cracked. "Risk your privacy? Your reputation?" "You're my sister," Jessica said simply. "That's what sisters do. They show up, even when it's messy." After they hung up, Lily lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Eleanor Clark's note in one hand, her phone in the other. Maybe Jessica was right. Maybe the only way through this was to face it, to stop being reactive and start being active, to tell her story before it got told for her. She pulled up Richard's contact and typed out a message. "I'll do the interview, but only if Jessica is there, and only if we pick the journalist. And I want approval over anything they write about Mom. Those are my conditions." The response came within seconds. "Done. We'll find the right person. Thank you for being brave enough to do this." Lily set the phone aside. Brave. That word again. She didn't feel brave. She felt terrified. But maybe that's what bravery was. Not the absence of fear, but doing the thing anyway. Choosing to be seen even when being invisible felt safer. Tomorrow, they'd start planning. Finding a journalist who would treat her story with care. Preparing for questions that would hurt to answer. Getting ready to bare her soul to strangers who'd already decided whether to believe her. But tonight, for just a few more hours, Lily let herself exist in the in-between. Neither the old her nor the new her. Just a girl trying to figure out how to be both. And maybe that was enough for now. The journalist's name was Mara Santos, and she'd built her reputation on telling hard stories with compassion. Her profile on a survivor of sex trafficking had won awards. Her piece on foster care failures had sparked actual policy changes. When Richard's publicist suggested her, both Lily and Jessica agreed immediately. They met at Jessica's apartment for a preliminary conversation, not the official interview, just a getting-to-know-you session. Mara was in her 40s, with gray-streaked black hair and the kind of eyes that seemed to actually see you instead of just looking at you. "I want to be clear about my approach," Mara said, after they'd settled in Jessica's living room. "I'm not interested in sensationalism. I'm interested in truth. That means I'll ask hard questions. I'll push for specifics when things get vague. But I'll also treat your story with the respect it deserves." "How does this work?" Lily asked. "Do you just ask questions and we answer?" "More or less. I'll record everything easier than taking notes, and it ensures I quote you accurately. The conversation will be long, probably several hours over multiple sessions. I'll ask about your childhood, your mother, your time on the streets, finding the ring, discovering Richard, all of it. And then what?" Jessica asked. "You write it, and we just hope you're fair?" "Then I write it, and you both get to review it before publication. Not to change content, but to ensure accuracy. If I've misunderstood something or gotten a fact wrong, you can correct it. But I won't let you soften the truth just because it's uncomfortable." It was more than Lily had hoped for. Control without censorship. A chance to tell her story while trusting someone else to shape it. "Okay," Lily said. I'm in. They scheduled the first official session for 3 days later, giving Lily time to prepare. Jessica helped her make a timeline of significant events: her mother's death, entering foster care, running away, the years on the street, finding the ring. Looking at it all laid out chronologically was overwhelming. So much loss compressed into so few years. The night before the interview, Lily couldn't sleep. She kept rehearsing answers to questions Mara might ask, trying to figure out how to talk about trauma without sounding broken, how to explain survival without making it sound heroic, how to honor her mother without making her sound perfect. At 2 a.m., her phone buzzed. Jessica. Can't sleep either. Lily responded, Is it that obvious? Jessica called instead of texting. Want to come over? Michael's on a business trip. We can have a slumber party and stress about tomorrow together. 40 minutes later, Lily was sitting on Jessica's expensive couch in borrowed pajamas, eating ice cream directly from the container. What if I cry during the interview? Lily asked. What if I can't talk about my mom without breaking down? Then you cry, Jessica said simply. Mara's not going to judge you for having emotions about your trauma. That's kind of the point, showing you're human, not a tabloid caricature. What if people still don't believe me, even after the interview? Some people won't. That's just reality. Jessica set down her own ice cream. There's a psychological phenomenon when people have already decided something. New evidence doesn't change their minds. It just makes them dig in deeper. So yeah, there will be people who read the interview and still think you're a con artist. But Lily, those people don't matter. The people who matter, who actually know you, already believe you. They talked until dawn. About the interview, about Victoria, about what would happen after the divorce was finalized, about whether Lily would go back to school, what Jessica's marriage was like, how strange it was to have a sister after a lifetime of being alone. When morning came, they were both exhausted, but somehow steadier, ready to face what came next. Mara arrived at Jessica's apartment at 10 a.m. with a recorder, a notebook, and a gentleness that immediately put Lily at ease. We'll start with your mom, Mara said after they'd settled in. Tell me about Sarah Barrett. Not the tragic backstory version, the real woman. What was she like? And suddenly, Lily was talking. About her mother's laugh, how it sounded like music. About how Sarah had made holidays special even when they had no money, turning Thanksgiving into a scavenger hunt and Christmas into a storytelling marathon. About her mother's hands calloused from work, but gentle when she braided Lily's hair. About how Sarah had believed in doing the right thing, even when it cost you everything. She sounds extraordinary, Mara said softly. And you said she never told you about Richard? About your father? Never. She just said he wasn't part of our story. That some chapters had to stay closed for everyone's good. Lily's voice cracked. I think she was protecting him. Protecting his marriage and career. She sacrificed everything so he wouldn't have to sacrifice anything. How does that make you feel? Looking back? Angry sometimes. Like, why did she have to be so noble? Why couldn't she ask for help? But also, proud. Because she chose what she thought was right, even when it destroyed her. The interview went on for hours. Mara asked about foster care, the families who'd been kind, and the ones who'd been cruel. About the decision to run away and live on the streets. About the daily reality of homelessness that most people never saw. What was the hardest part? Mara asked. Not the most dramatic, the actual hardest. Lily thought about it. Being invisible, walking past thousands of people every day, and knowing they didn't see you as human. You become background noise, part of the scenery. That does something to you, makes you start to believe you don't matter. But you kept your integrity anyway, Mara noted. You returned a ring worth $250,000 when you were starving. Why? Because my mom raised me to believe that character matters more than circumstances. That poverty can take everything from you except your choices. Lily met Mara's eyes. I couldn't control being homeless. Couldn't control the system that failed me. But I could control whether I became the kind of person who stole. And I decided I wouldn't. Jessica spoke up then, her voice thick with emotion. And that's why this whole narrative about Lily being a con artist is so insulting. She literally proved her character by returning something that could have changed her life. What con artist does that? Mara turned to Jessica. Tell me what it's been like for you. Finding out you have a sister. Jessica was quieter in her answers, more measured. But she was honest. About the shock, the anger at their father, the complicated feelings about Victoria, the strange, unexpected bond forming with this girl who should have been a stranger but somehow wasn't. Lily could have resented me, Jessica said. I had everything she should have had. Money, stability, a father who knew I existed. But she doesn't. She's been nothing but gracious and kind, and that tells me more about her character than any DNA test ever could. They broke for lunch, then continued. Mara asked about the wedding, the confrontation with Victoria, the tabloid storm, about Richard's offer of the brownstone and what it meant to go from homeless to heir. Do you feel like you belong in this world now? Mara asked. The world of penthouses and privilege? No, Lily said honestly. I don't know if I ever will. I can put on nice clothes and learn which fork to use, but inside I'm still the girl who knows where all the best dumpsters are. Who can spot an unsafe situation from a block away? Who flinches when doors slam because it sounds too much like violence? Do you think that will change? I don't know. Maybe, but also, I'm not sure I want it to completely change. Those survival skills kept me alive. That awareness saved me more times than I can count. I don't want to become so comfortable I forget where I came from. As the afternoon wore on, the questions got harder. About her mother's death. About nights when she'd wanted to give up. About the shame that came with asking strangers for spare change. Tell me about the worst moment, Mara said gently. The time you came closest to losing yourself. Lily was quiet for a long time. Jessica reached over and squeezed her hand. There was a night, maybe 6 months before I found the ring. It was winter, freezing cold. I'd been trying to get into shelters, but they were all full. I ended up in a doorway, and this man, he offered me money. A lot of money. For... She couldn't finish the sentence. Take your time, Mara said. I almost said yes. That's the truth nobody wants to hear. I was so cold and so hungry and so tired of fighting, I almost did it. But then I heard my mom's voice in my head, not literally, but you know what I mean, and I walked away. I slept in that doorway with nothing instead. Woke up with hypothermia. Spent 2 days in the ER. You chose dignity over survival, Mara observed. I chose to survive as myself, Lily corrected. There's a difference. Survival isn't just staying alive. It's staying human. The interview wound down as evening approached. Mara turned off her recorder and looked at both women with something like admiration. Thank you, she said. Both of you. I know this wasn't easy. But your story, Lily, your story, it matters. It's not just about you and Richard. It's about every kid the system fails. Every person society decides is disposable. That's the story I'm going to tell. After Mara left, Lily and Jessica sat in silence for several minutes. How do you feel? Jessica finally asked, exhausted, exposed, but also, lighter? Lily tried to articulate it. Like I've been carrying all this alone for so long, and now it's out there. Someone else knows the whole truth. Someone who's going to tell it right. She's going to do you justice, Jessica agreed. I could tell. She sees you. They ordered Chinese food and watched terrible reality TV, needing something mindless after the emotional intensity of the day. But as Lily was leaving, Jessica pulled her into a hug. I'm proud of you, she whispered. Mom would be too. It was the first time Jessica had referred to Sarah as Mom, and it made Lily's eyes sting with grateful tears. The article would run in 2 weeks. They had 14 days to prepare for everything to change again. The article dropped on a Tuesday morning, and the internet exploded. Mara had titled it, The Invisible Daughter. One woman's journey from homelessness to heiress, and the father who never knew she existed. It ran in a prestigious magazine known for long-form journalism, complete with photos Lily and Jessica together, Richard looking somber and regretful, even an old picture of Sarah that Lily had provided. The piece was everything they'd hoped for. Mara had woven together Lily's story with broader statistics about foster care failures, homelessness, and the children left behind by systemic neglect. She'd presented the facts clearly, the DNA evidence, the timeline, Richard's genuine ignorance of Lily's existence. But she'd also centered Lily's humanity, her resilience, her refusal to be broken by circumstances that would have destroyed most people. The section about Sarah was particularly beautiful. Mara had captured her as a real person, flawed, struggling, but fundamentally good. A woman who'd made an impossible choice and paid for it with her life. By noon, the article had gone viral. By evening, it was trending on every platform. The narrative shifted so dramatically, it gave Lily whiplash. Suddenly, she wasn't gold digger girl anymore. She was the invisible daughter. People were sharing the article, with captions like, "This broke my heart," and "Everyone needs to read this." Celebrities were tweeting about the failures of the foster care system. Politicians were calling for reform. Victoria's supporters largely went silent, though a few diehards insisted the whole thing was still somehow staged. But they were drowned out by the overwhelming wave of public support. Lily's phone never stopped buzzing. Friend requests, interview offers, strangers wanting to share their own stories of homelessness or foster care. It was overwhelming and validating and terrifying all at once. "You should see Twitter," Jessica said, scrolling through her phone. "People are calling you an inspiration." Someone started a hashtag, It's about bringing attention to homeless youth. "That's good," Lily said faintly. "Right? That's what we wanted." "It is good." Jessica looked up. "But you look like you're about to throw up." I didn't expect this. I thought people would read it and maybe believe me. I didn't think it would become a movement." Richard called that afternoon, his voice warm with relief. "Lily, have you seen the response? It's incredible. Mara did a beautiful job." "Yeah, it's a lot." "I know it is. But it's also justice. People see you now. Really see you. Not as a scandal or a headline, but as my daughter." His voice cracked slightly. "I'm proud of you for being brave enough to tell your truth." The divorce proceedings accelerated after the article. Victoria's lawyers, sensing that public opinion had shifted decisively against their client, pushed for a quick settlement. Victoria would get a substantial payout, but nothing close to what she'd originally demanded. Richard would keep the brownstone that he'd promised to Lily. The marriage would be dissolved within 6 weeks. "She's probably relieved," Jessica said when they heard the news. "She gets to walk away with money and blame him for everything." "Do you think she ever actually loved him?" Lily asked. Jessica considered it. "Maybe, in her way. But I think she loved the life he gave her more. And when you threatened that life, love didn't stand a chance." 3 days after the article ran, Lily received a letter. It was forwarded through Richard's office, and the return address was from a women's shelter in Seattle. Inside was a handwritten note on lined paper. "Dear Lily, you don't know me, but I knew your mother. We were in the same shelter program back in 2009. Sarah talked about you constantly. She was so proud of you, so determined to give you a better life. I lost track of her after she left the program, but I thought about her often over the years. When I saw your article, I immediately recognized her in those photos. I'm so sorry for your loss. Sarah was one of the kindest people I ever met. I wanted you to know something she told me once. She said that if anything ever happened to her, her biggest regret would be that you might think you weren't loved enough. She said she loved you more than she loved her own life. And everything she did, including keeping you away from your father, was because she believed it was what was best for you. I don't know if that helps, but I thought you should know that your mother's love for you was the realest thing in her world. Wishing you healing and peace. Jennifer Martinez Lily read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Then she called Jessica, who came over immediately and held her while she cried. "She loved me," Lily kept saying. "She really loved me." "Of course she did," Jessica whispered. That was never in question. But somehow, hearing it from someone who'd known her mother during the hardest times made it more real. Sarah hadn't just loved her in the good moments. She'd loved her in the desperate ones too, enough to sacrifice everything, including Lily's understanding of why. That evening, Lily and Richard met for dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant. It was the first time they'd been alone together since the article ran. "How are you handling all this?" Richard asked after they'd ordered. "I don't know," Lily admitted. "It's good, I think. But weird. I spent so long being invisible that being seen feels uncomfortable." "It won't always feel that way," Richard said gently. "You'll adjust. But Lily, I want you to know you don't owe anyone your story. You've shared what you wanted to share. If you need to step back now, that's completely okay. What about the movement? The hashtag? That's not your responsibility. You sparked something important, but you don't have to carry it. Other people can take it from here. Your job is to heal and build your life." It was permission she hadn't known she needed. The weight of expectation to be an inspiration, to represent all invisible children, to turn her trauma into activism lifted slightly. "Thank you," she said. "For understanding. I'm learning," Richard replied. "Not fast enough, but I'm trying." They talked about next steps. Lily enrolling in college for the spring semester. Richard setting up a trust fund. Jessica's plans to move into a new place with Michael. The future slowly becoming something Lily could actually imagine. The brownstone became Lily's sanctuary over the following weeks. She spent days just wandering through its rooms, touching the restored moldings, standing in the empty spaces, and imagining what they would become. Jessica helped her pick out furniture, not the expensive designer pieces Victoria would have chosen, but comfortable things that felt like home. A worn leather couch, bookshelves that reached the ceiling, a Kit Clark table big enough for family dinners. "You're nesting," Jessica observed, watching Lily arrange pillows for the 3rd time. "Is that bad? It's perfect. You're building something permanent, something that's yours." But permanence was harder than Lily had anticipated. She'd spent so long in survival mode that simply existing without crisis felt alien. She'd wake up at dawn with her heart racing, convinced something was wrong, only to remember she was safe. She'd find herself counting her money obsessively, even though the trust fund Richard had established meant she'd never be poor again. She'd hoard food in the pantry until Jessica gently pointed out that she had shelves full of canned goods she'd never eat. "It's normal," the therapist Richard had helped her find said during their 2nd session. Dr. Clark was a middle-aged woman who specialized in trauma and housing insecurity. Your nervous system spent years in hypervigilance. It doesn't know how to turn off just because your circumstances changed. Give yourself time. Time. Lily was learning that healing didn't follow a timeline. Some days, she felt strong and capable, ready to embrace her new life. Other days, the weight of everything she'd lost crushed her, and she'd spend hours crying over her mother, over the childhood stolen from her, over the girl she might have been in a different life. Jessica understood in ways Lily hadn't expected. She'd show up unannounced with takeout when she sensed Lily was spiraling. She'd sit in comfortable silence or talk for hours, whatever Lily needed. She'd become the sister Lily had never known she was missing. "I talked to Mom," Jessica said one afternoon as they painted Lily's future bedroom. They'd chosen a warm gray that made the room feel peaceful. "Your mom?" Lily's stomach clenched. "Our mom, Victoria." Jessica's brush strokes were angry. I told her I was ashamed of her, that she'd shown me exactly who she really was, and I didn't like what I saw. What did she say? That I was being naive, that I'd understand when I was older and saw how the world really worked, that protecting your interests wasn't cruelty, it was survival. Jessica stopped painting. She actually said that survival, like she has any idea what that word means. I'm sorry, Lily said softly. I know she's still your mother. She is. And I love her because she raised me and gave me a good childhood. But I don't respect her anymore, and I'm not sure I can forgive her. Jessica turned to face Lily. Is that terrible? No, it's honest. They painted in silence for a while, the rhythmic sound of brushes soothing. I've been thinking about Sarah, Jessica said eventually, about how she could have made my dad's life hell if she'd wanted to. Could have demanded money, threatened his career. But she didn't. She just disappeared, took all the burden on herself. She was good at that, Lily said, taking on too much alone. I think I would have liked her, if we'd had the chance to meet. The thought had never occurred to Lily, Jessica, and Sarah as friends, as family. Two women who should have known each other but never would. The loss of it hit her fresh and sharp. College applications became Lily's focus as autumn deepened. She'd gotten her GED years ago, during a brief period in a group home with a caseworker who actually cared. Now she was applying to schools with Jessica's help, writing essays about resilience and second chances. You're overqualified for the essay prompt, Jessica joked, reading over Lily's draft about overcoming adversity. They ask for 500 words on challenges you've faced, and you're like, which year? But the process was empowering. Lily was choosing her future for the first time in her life, not reacting to crisis, not just surviving, but actively deciding who she wanted to become. She applied to 6 schools, all in the city. She wasn't ready to leave yet, not when she was just learning what it meant to have family, to have roots. Richard's divorce was finalized on a gray November morning. He called Lily afterward, his voice heavy with complicated emotions. It's done, he said. 32 years, over. How do you feel? Relieved, sad, angry, grateful. He laughed without humor. All of it at once. Is that normal? I think so. Endings are messy even when they're necessary. I'm taking some time off work, Richard said. Thinking about what I want the next chapter of my life to look like. I've spent decades building a career. Maybe it's time to focus on building a family instead. They started having weekly dinners, Lily, Richard, and Jessica. Sometimes Michael joined them, and he and Lily were developing an easy rapport. He was funny and kind, and clearly devoted to Jessica. He treated Lily like the sister-in-law she was, with none of the awkwardness she'd feared. You know what's weird? Lily said during one of these dinners, looking around the table at her unexpected family. 6 months ago, I didn't know any of you existed, and now I can't imagine my life without you. That's not weird, Richard said, his eyes suspiciously bright. That's how family works. Sometimes it finds you in the most unexpected ways. The holidays approached, and with them, a question Lily had been avoiding. What did Christmas look like now? She'd spent the last several Christmases in shelters or on the streets, trying not to think about the holiday traditions she'd lost with her mother. Come to our place, Jessica insisted. Michael and I are hosting. It'll be small, just us, you, Dad, Michael's parents. Nothing fancy. What about Victoria? She's going to her sister's in Connecticut. We're taking space. Maybe eventually we'll figure out how to be in the same room. But not yet. Christmas morning arrived cold and bright. Lily woke up in her brownstone, in her own bed, and for the first time in years didn't feel the familiar ache of loss quite so sharply. She still missed her mother. That would never go away. But she had something now too. People who knew her, who chose her, who wanted her present at their table. Jessica had gone overboard with gifts, despite Lily's protests. Books, and art supplies and Kit Clark gadgets and a beautiful coat that probably cost more than Lily had spent on food in entire months when she was homeless. Richard gave her a photo album he'd put together, pictures of him and Sarah from college, of Lily as a baby that he must have gotten from somewhere, of their new family over the past few months. "I wanted you to have a record," he explained, "of where you came from and where you are now. So you never forget either," Lily cried, which seemed to be her default emotional response lately. But they were good tears this time. As the day wound down and they sat around Jessica's living room, full of food and surprisingly content, Lily realized something had shifted. She wasn't healed. Healing wasn't a destination, but a process. She still had hard days ahead, still carried trauma that would take years to unpack, but she wasn't alone anymore. And that made all the difference.